Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto Was Trained by a Forgotten Swordsman. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
He handed out the exams to everyone in the room and said, "This portion of the exam will be a written exam. There will be 10 questions. If you are caught cheating 5 times, he will be expelled from the exam and not allowed to come back." He then muttered under his breath, "There are only 9 questions on the exam. I will give the 10th questions 15 minutes before the end. I wish all good luck. You're going to need it." Gazing down at his test, Naruto reviewed the questions. These questions seem much more difficult than they ought to be for a genin to respond to. Kyubi. And what about getting eliminated from exams if you were caught cheating twice? As Naruto scanned the room, he noticed that numerous proctors were seated on the room's edges, taking notes on a clipboard. Additionally, it appears that far too many proctors are observing us. I believe it's possible that you were meant to cheat on this test but not in an obvious manner. I could give you all the answers, but where would be the fun of thinking up of a way to cheat? Thanks a lot, Kyubi. You were such a big help. As Naruto looked around the room, he noticed that several people were already cheating, with Neji using his Byakugan and Sasuke using his Sharingan. After spending 15 minutes or so trying to come up with a plan, Naruto heard projectiles flying in his direction. 3 senbons flew past his head and lodged themselves in the examiner's test behind him as he opened his eyes. Naruto recognized the female voice that spoke up as Haku's. "Number 38, you are to get up and leave with your team." The examiner raised his voice angrily. Haku appeared in front of him, slammed him into a wall, and used multiple senbons to pin him there. "Are you kidding me? There is no way that you can be watching everyone in this room at once." As Haku approached the examiner, all of the examiners watched. The examiner nodded his head and walked out of the room with his colleagues, obviously shaken. "Now let me get one thing straight. In this room, anything we say goes, so when one of us says for you to leave, you are to follow it without questions, got it?" he asked. After making her way back to her seat, Haku waved to Naruto, who waved back. While the rest of the class was preoccupied, Naruto received an answer from the person sitting next to him, and he came up with an idea. In order to have it explode in a few minutes, he surreptitiously took a charka smoke bomb out of one of his bags and charged charka into it. With tact, he set it on the floor and pushed it a few seats away. Ibiki had been observing Naruto the entire time, and when he saw the boy reach into his bag, he was expecting something to happen, but nothing came of it. However, complete chaos broke out a few minutes later when a huge explosion of smoke burst from beneath an examiner's chair. In order to duplicate the test answers, Naruto swiftly created shadow clones and sent them beneath the smokescreen. The clones dispersed after receiving an answer, and Naruto had the answers right away. He then waited for the proctors to clear the smoke so he could write down his responses. Ibiki watched Naruto suspiciously, but he was powerless to stop him because he had shown no overt signs of cheating. 45 minutes later, Ibiki finally spoke. The door opened, and everyone nearly burst out laughing when they saw Kenshin enter. "All right, listen up, maggots. Now for your 10th question. But, before I do that, I am going to pass this question over to someone else. And he should be here right now." They all thought the same thing. This guy is a wimp. Kenshin's voice was informal. The genin hopeful could only chuckle to himself at this short, thin person who wasn't even qualified to be a ninja. "So I guess I'm here to administer the final question. Now, let me think." When Naruto realized what Kenshin Ne was going to do to the room, all he could do was stare nervously. When he turned forward, he concentrated his will and overcame Kenshin's intent. Everyone felt a tremendous pressure on their bodies, though some were able to ignore it, and only a select few, like Naruto, were affected. "I decided to enforce a new rule this year. Anyone that doesn't want to take the 10th question, raise your hand so that you and your team can be removed from this exam." "Now why in the world we would not answer the 10th question?" asked Kiba, who, like many others, was able to dismiss the consequences in order to have a less significant impact. Kenshin responded with a death glare and a lethal voice. "Whoever fails to answer the question correctly will be banned from ever taking the chunin exams again." "What kind of garbage is this? There are people that have taken the test before and failed and are back here." Sasuke began to scream. As soon as Kenshin relaxed the pressure in the room, a number of hands shot up and several teams left with their heads down. "Well, that's too bad. Our chunin exams, our rules. Now choose." While everyone else hesitated, Naruto gazed down at Kenshin with a cool expression. "So, Proctor.san, our entire ninja life banks on this question, correct?" Naruto flinched when Kenshin gave him the death stare, but he quickly regained his composure. In a way, I suppose so. Naruto slammed his hands on the desk after getting to his feet. Then so be it. I risk everything on this question. I may be stuck as a genin, but that doesn't I can't outperform everyone I go against, even if the person is a cage. So bring it on your stupid question. They had a confident expression on their faces and appeared prepared to answer the question, as Kenshin and Ibiki could see by looking around the room. Ibiki moved forward once more as Kenshin took a step back. You all passed the first exam. As they took in the news, everyone just looked at Ibiki in disbelief. Wait a second. Why the hell did we do this test if we were going to pass in the end? Tamari yelled. Good question. Let me answer you with a scenario. You are given a mission to retrieve a scroll that will help you village greatly. The problem is there will be lethal traps and highly trained guards protecting this scroll. You are left with two choices. Either move forward with your squad and retrieve the scroll but suffer causalities, or turn back and return to your village scroll. Less but with a full squad. As a shinobi and potential chunin, you become leaders of squads and you will be faced with scenarios like this. It is up to you to determine whether you can preserve and lead your squad to success. This first part of the exam was to test your skills in gathering information without being caught. Those who failed would have been captured and tortured in the real world, like this. Ibiki pulled off his headband and it revealed torture marks of all sorts. He smiled at the numerous genins' horrified and disgusted expressions. Just as he was putting his headband back on, a black ball exploded through the window. When it unraveled, two kunai protruded from the ceiling, exposing a woman wearing a trench coat and a big banner identifying herself as Mitarashi Anko, the second exam proctor. She ignored the atmosphere in the room, standing in a way that seemed to make her look the best. From behind the banner, Ibiki whispered, "Wrong moment to enter, Anko." Anko turned her attention to the genin before her. "What, still 63 genin? You're slipping, Ibiki." Ibiki replied nonchalantly, "Well, it seems this year's batch is much better than we thought." Anko gestured for the genin to follow her, saying, "It doesn't matter. After my part of the exam, this number is going to be cut up by more than half." She stooped once more and said, "Let's go, maggots." The Hokage sent me a message saying they would be a company proctor for all parts of the exams, so where's the person? Ibiki gestured toward Kenshin, and Anko's eyes followed. She looked at him once and complained right away. "Oh, you have got to be kidding. There is no way this guy can be assisting us in these exams. I mean, he doesn't even look fit enough to be a ninja, being so skinny." Kenshin gazed solely at her. "So, are you going to defy the Hokage's orders, then?" Anko began to speak, but she halted and simply made everyone follow her once more while muttering to herself. "The Forest of Death, Area 44. Welcome to the Forest of Death, maggots. This is where your next part of your exam will take place. You will spend 5 days inside the Forest of Death, trying to retrieve a heaven and an earth scroll. Each squad will be given one scroll and they will have to get the other one while in the forest. You are to bring both scrolls to the tower that is in the middle of this forest and instructions will be given then." She took out a wavier. She looked at the faces and could see that many of them were afraid of dying. "Oh yay, you kids will have to sign this stating that Konoha is not responsible for any deaths or injuries while in there. Also, watch out for the animals in there that may be looking for a meal to eat." Their fear made her laugh inwardly, but she was soon let down by Naruto's composure and lack of fear. She threw a kunai at Naruto with a sly smile, but he didn't even flinch or move. His cheek was grazed by the kunai, and blood began to flow. Anko came up behind him and gave him a very sexy hug. With a suggestive lick, she brought her face to his cheek and removed the blood. "You know, it's the arrogant ones that die first, you know?" Anko noticed a kunai in Naruto's hand, held at her stomach. "Now, you ever said I was acting arrogantly and you might let go before you get stabbed." Anko swiftly took another kunai from her sleeve and placed it on the throat of another genin from grass, saying, "It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, isn't it, brat?" The genin's tongue was encircling the kunai when it fell into Anko's hand, saying, "I think you dropped this." She wiped the salvia off and put the kunai in her pocket, saying, "Thanks, I guess." All of the genin nodded, and each team approached to sign the waivers, receive a heaven scroll, and be led to a gate. Each team will come up to the small booth over there where you will sing the waivers and receive a scroll. A guide will also direct you to gate and a whistle will sound and that will be the beginning of the exam. Understood? After waiting at a gate until the whistle blew, Team 7 rushed inside and paused in a clearing when Naruto declared that he had to urinate. "Naruto, that's gross. Go somewhere else and do your business," Sakura yelled. Naruto gave her a wary glance. After leaving the clearing to find a quiet spot, he quickly bit his finger and made hand gestures to call forth Sakura. And if it was Sasuke that had said what I just did, would tell to do someplace else, Sakura? He asked. A few tiny foxes emerged from the smoke plume as he slammed his hand down on the ground. They all gave him a questioning glance. The foxes all bowed briefly before running off in different directions when Naruto knelt down and said, "Okay, I want you to go out and scout for us. Report back if you see anyone dangerous." After getting to his feet, Naruto tested the string and took out his bow and arrows. With a sudden knock, he launched an arrow into a tree. The unidentified spy fell from his perch, breaking several branches and letting out a cry of pain. Naruto approached the mist ninja, who was on the ground, clutching a rib and attempting to stop the wound on his shoulder. When he attempted to defend himself by drawing a kunai, Naruto pinned the ninja's sleeve against the trunk with an arrow. With a forceful blow to the side of the face, Naruto, who was standing above the ninja, rendered him unconscious. He discovered an earth scroll in the ninja's pouch. What do you know? He tied the ninja to a tree trunk and placed the earth scroll in his bag. He walked away and returned to the clearing where they had paused. There was nobody there when Naruto got there, but one of his foxes had hurried back, obviously upset about something. After he calmed it, it pointed where it had spotted the danger before poofing away. In the hopes that the fox would lead him to Sakura and Sasuke, Naruto hurried away. What took place during Naruto's absence? A grass genin emerged from the ground close to Sasuke and Sakura, who were patiently waiting for Naruto. When Sakura and Sasuke found themselves under the tremendous pressure of murderous intent and a genjutsu that caused them to witness their own deaths, they turned to face their unidentified enemy. As soon as Sakura's legs buckled beneath her, Sasuke rolled over and immediately threw up. Both of them gazed in terror at the grass genin, who merely chuckled at their frailty. The grass genin released the killing intent once more, and both of them froze up. So this is what the mighty Uchiha Sasuke can do. Pathetic. The genin removed 2 kunai and threw them by pulling his in back. Sasuke tightened his hold on the kunai, unable to look away from his imminent death. I'm not going to let it end this way, damn it. The genin threw the kunai, but Sasuke quickly grabbed Sakura and fled from the genin after cutting his leg with the weapon. As he gazed at the location where his 2 kunai were now lodged in the earth, the genin gave a small laugh. After licking his lips, the genin pursued Sasuke, saying, "It appears that young Sasuke cut himself to break through my genjutsu. Well, this makes the hunt so much better." Sakura was on Sasuke's shoulders as he dashed through the trees, and he didn't slow down until he was certain he had lost the strong grass genin. Leaning against the tree to catch his breath, he placed Sakura gently on the ground. They both looked up to see the grass growing above them when they heard a voice. "Sasuke, did you really think that you would be able to escape from me?" Sasuke screamed, "What the hell do you want from me, freak?" The genin rushed forward and punched Sasuke, saying, "Ku, wouldn't you like to know, Sasuke?" He managed to avoid it, but the other's genin hand swiftly grabbed him, and he was flung into the tree branches. The grass genin dashed after Sasuke as he flipped in midair and landed on a tree branch. Jutsu no Bukaku. Sasuke spit a huge ball of fire directly at the grass genin, but the grass ninja managed to avoid it. Sasuke swiftly spat out more fireballs, but the elusive grass ninja dodged them all. Sasuke fell back to a lower branch after the grass ninja lunged forward and gave him a straight punch to the face. After falling onto the branch, Sasuke made an unsuccessful attempt to get up. The grass genin's neck began to stretch, and he moved his jaw wide to bite down on Sasuke. "So this is how the mighty Sasuke goes down, but you still have something I want and I intend to get it." Sasuke and the grass ninja's mouths clamped down on Naruto's arm, leaving an odd mark with 3 commas on it. "Get away from him, bastard," an arm said. Immediately, Naruto began to scream aloud and writhe in agony. Sasuke was relieved by Naruto's suffering and hurried to him. Sasuke took Naruto by the shoulder and said, "Naruto, what's wrong?" But Naruto could only scream in agony as he clutched his arm. Turning, Sasuke faced the grass genin. "What the hell did you do to Naruto?" Sasuke, unaware that his 3rd Tomo had been activated his Sharingan in response to Naruto's persistent cries, saying, "I gave him a gift that will make him have powers beyond his wildest dreams." In order to escape Sasuke's attacks, the grass ninja leapt back as he charged the grass genin. As he moved, Sasuke's gaze followed him. "His every move is visible to me." Sasuke anticipated the grass genin's attack and twisted in midair, removing multiple windmill shuriken with wire attached and hurling them at the grass genin. He wrapped the wires around the grass genin and bound him to a tree by manipulating them with his mouth and hands. Jutsu no Ryuka. As they approached the grass genin at a frightening rate, a wire in Sasuke's mouth caught fire and spread to all the other wires, serving as a guide. The genin screamed in agony as the fire burned their skin after it slammed into them. Sasuke collapsed to his knees and inhaled deeply to fill his lungs. He looked up, but his wires were cut, and he couldn't find a burnt body tied to the tree. Sasuke attempted to stand up and fight once more, but he was unable to do so because he had expended too much charka on the previous attack and could only watch as the grass materialized in front of him. Sasuke was unable to protect himself, but it appeared as though a fake skin was separating from his face. He peeled off the remaining fake skin and stretched his neck to bite Sasuke once more. Well, Sasuke. That attack was quite powerful, but too bad it wasn't powerful enough. Sasuke began to scream as he clutched his shoulder after the enigmatic genin bit down on his neck and left a 3 tomo mark on the back of his shoulder. The genin laughed and pulled his neck away. His icy laugh was gone as he walked out, saying, "In time, Sasuke, you and your friend will seek me out for power." Sakura had been observing the whole time, wondering what she could do as she could only look at the screaming Sasuke and writhing Naruto. She began to feel worthless and without hope, and tears began to form in her eyes. What am I going to do, guys? In the meantime, with Kenshin and Anko. Kenshin was quietly meditating while Anko finished a plate of danjo and threw the needle at a tree to complete the Konoha symbol she had been working on. Anko boldly said, "So where are you from, wimp?" Without opening his eyes, Kenshin stated, "This one is now an ally and a shinobi of Konoha. That is all you need to know." Anko approached him, leaned down, and spoke in a suggestive manner, "Are you sure you don't want to tell me anything?" Any other guy would have killed to be this close to Anko and see her up close, but Kenshin wasn't like other guys. He opened his eyes to be met with a plethora of Anko's possessions. Anko was deeply affected by the statement, "I told you everything I want you to know. There are some things in my past I rather not talk about." She immediately stopped bugging Kenshin after hearing it. Suddenly, an Anbu materialized and swiftly conveyed his message. "Anko-san, we have a situation." A short while later, in front of a line of statues. All Anko and Kenshin could do was gaze at the 3 victims whose faces had been completely removed. Anko murmured to herself as she knelt down and examined the damage. Her eyes widened as she took a closer look and realized, this looks like the works of someone familiar. She turned to the Anbu who had shown her the way and said, "Orochimaru." The Anbu nodded his head and vanished, while Anko ran into the forest. "Go report this to the Hokage and I will meet up with the Hokage after I have gathered more information on this event." After hearing Anko mention Orochimaru, Kenshin knew something was wrong and made the decision to follow her to ensure that nothing negative would occur. In the woods at the moment, Anko was leaping and tumbling through the trees when she halted and shouted at the back of a retreating figure, "Orochimaru." The figure turned, a fake look of surprise on its face. Well, if isn't my old apprentice. How have you been holding up these past years?" Anko spat. "Fine, no thanks to you, snake." "Oh, your words wound me, Anko-chan. But I can assume we are not here to talk." Orochimaru pretended to be hurt. Anger lit up Anko's face. Anko pushed Orochimaru against the tree and stabbed her left hand with his, saying, "You're right. I'm here, to kill you." She took Orochimaru's right hand and began performing seals, saying, "I'm going to need to borrow your hand here." "Oh, so you are planning to do that move?" "Yes, I am, and when we both die, I'll see you in hell." Anko tore the kunai from the tree and tossed it behind her as the Orochimaru turned to mud. "Too bad, I'm not real." The snakes flew up to bind Anko's arms and legs together after the real Orochimaru caught the kunai between his fingers. He approached her and began to caress her face. Orochimaru left the area, and the snakes vanished, leaving Anko alone as her cursed seal began to act up. "My dear Anko, how does it feel to not be chosen? I have 2 new candidates in the forest right now and we shall see if they will survive if see another day. Oh, and don't tell Sartobi about my presence or I will bring about the destruction of this pathetic village." In a misty fog, she grabbed her shoulder and rose. She stumbled and felt a powerful pair of hands grab hold of her. Before she passed out entirely, all she could see when she looked up was an X-shaped scar on someone's face. Anko opened her eyes blurrily as she sensed someone carrying her. She went out to touch the X-shaped mark she noticed on someone's face. When she touched the scar, the figure winced. "I see that you are awake now." Rubbing her eyes, Anko could see that it was Kenshin. She blushed rapidly and pushed herself out of Kenshin's arms angrily after looking around and realizing he was carrying her bridal style. She lowered her legs to the floor. She walked a few steps before tripping and falling, but Kenshin held her by the hand before she fell, saying, "I can walk by myself without any of help, boy." He took her arm around his shoulder and held her up, saying, "Pardon me, but I do think that you aren't fully recovered from whatever Orochimaru did to you. I am older than you think, Anko. Dono." Anko was shocked by what she saw in his face. "There is no way you can be older than me with a face like that." Anko nodded, and they both hurried as fast as they could to the tower. "Believe what you want, then. But I do believe we should have that mark examined by the Hokage." With Hinata, a fox emerged and sniffed at the ground as Kiba, Shino, and Hinata were stopping there running in the forest. It approached Hinata, sniffed around her leg, and began tugging at her trousers. Hinata shrieked as she peered down. "Kawaii," she grabbed it right away and began to scratch behind its ear. Kiba asked, "Hinata, where did that fox come from?" Hinata gave a shoulder shrug. "I don't know, but it's so cute." She pressed her cheek against the fox's velvety fur. "Hinata, you shouldn't do that. Who knows what kinds of diseases or bugs that it has." Hinata showed Kiba the fox by holding it out. The fox gazed at Kiba and yipped slightly, asking, "Could a face this cute possibly have anything wrong with it?" Kiba stepped away from Hinata, who appeared dejected, and said, "Whatever. Just keep it away from me." Shino approached Hinata and touched her shoulder. "Hinata, ignore Kiba's attitude. I believe his dog-like tendencies also branched out into a dislike of foxes. I do believe we have had enough rest, and I think we should progress to the tower as we already have both scrolls." The fox wrapped its tail around Hinata's neck, rested on her shoulder, and ran up her arm. Before leaving again, Hinata gave it another scratch behind the ear. Team 7. Under the protection of some enormous tree roots, Sakura had carried her two male teammates. Both of them were unconscious, and although Sasuke was largely silent, Naruto was writhing in his sleep and seemed to be leaking a variety of charca at a steady pace. Sakura rubbed her eyes to ward off the sleep that had been catching up with her and gazed at them anxiously. 3 individuals were watching her and were ready to attack. "I suggest we send out a decoy if there are any traps hidden around her," a man's voice remarked. "Are you kidding me? A girl like that set up any trap? Please, she doesn't even look like she should be a ninja," added a different man. A female voice stated, "You know, appearances can be deceiving." The first voice said, "Whatever. Let's just finish our job, once more." When Sakura noticed a squirrel running into the area next to the tree while she was sleeping, she hurled a kunai at it, scaring it and sending it running in a different way. Sakura turned back to Sasuke and Naruto after letting out a breath of relief. After a few minutes, Sakura became aware that a number of new individuals were entering the clearing. One had bandages over his face. Another had black hair with spikes and a girl in a green vest. "Who are you and what do you want?" The boy with the spiky hair gestured. "His name is Zaku. My name is Dosu and the girl's name is Kin. As for our purpose, we're here to kill Sasuke Uchiha," said the man with a bandage. Sakura instantly stiffened and drew a kunai to protect herself. "Well, what are you waiting for? Come attack me so you can get to Sasuke." The 3 sound genin leapt into the air, and Sakura smirked and cut a wire behind her. "And fall right into your trap?" "I think not. The grass around this tree is brown, which meant it has been turned over. Obviously, a trap had been laid on the ground for any possible attacker that would come. But we also noticed something was wrong when we sent that squirrel into the clearing and you cleared it away from the grass." The sound genin were astonished to have fallen into a double-layered trap as a massive wood came out of the air right at them. A huge explosion of air erupted, shattering the wood into splinters as Zaku grinned and extended his arms. They glared at Sakura after landing on the ground. All 3 moved toward Sakura, saying, "A well-placed 2-layered trap, but too bad it didn't work." She immediately began formulating a number of strategies in her head to try to protect herself, Sasuke, and Naruto, but each one resulted in a terrible injury to someone. Sakura charged forward, drew 2 kunai, and sliced at the team's 2 male members. As soon as they were out of the way, they both launched attacks, the wrapped one with a gauntlet that appeared to do no harm until she started to throw up. The spiky-haired one had holes in his arm. She collapsed on the ground, clutching her stomach and covered in cuts. She got back up, but Zaku blasted her away. Dosu confronted Kin. "Kin, I want you to restrain her. I plan to mess around with her after I finish off the Uchiha." Sakura's hand was bound behind her back by Kin, who then produced ninja wire. Sakura whispered to her, "Why are you listening to those 2 jerks on your team? Kin sighed deeply. Because I was forced to by Orochimaru and he gave them control to do anything to me. They haven't done anything yet, but I know that they are thinking about it. I am scared of them and I don't know what to do. Dosu placed his kunai to Sasuke's throat as Zaku and Dosu stood over his body, both holding kunai. Some challenging task this was. Sasuke's left side was covered in a series of dark marks as a massive surge of dark chakra burst from him. In a zombie-like state, Sasuke got to his feet and first gazed at Zaku and Dosu, then shifted his gaze to Sakura and Kin. "Sakura, who did that to you?" he whispered. Sakura was unable to speak intelligibly and could only gaze at Sasuke and his strange appearance. Zaku raised his voice. "We did all of that her, and after we finish you off, we plan to have some fun with her." Sasuke suddenly shifted and punched Dosu and Zaku in the face, asking, "Is that so?" Both of them clutched their faces as they flew back. Dosu and Zaku immediately got their weapons ready to attack Sasuke, but he was out of their line of sight. Before they felt a touch on their throats, they looked around wildly. Sasuke began to clamp down on their throats while giving them a menacing gaze. Dosu and Zaku began to struggle for breath and struggled to free themselves from Sasuke's hold on their throats. After they went dark, Sasuke let them fall to the ground and shifted his focus to Kin. As Sasuke approached Kin, he was stopped by a strangely familiar figure with fox tails and ears. The figure put 2 fingers to Sasuke's forehead and said, "Sleep." Sasuke's eyes closed and he fell to the ground, his curse marks fading. "You were teammates with those 2 scumbags and now it's time for you to go with them." The figure turned to face Kin and Sakura. When Sakura realized that the individual was Naruto without his mask, she gasped in surprise and was only able to ramble incoherently while her mind attempted to process the information. "Sakura, please close your mouth and speak only when you are ready." Sakura winced and inhaled deeply for a few seconds to regain her composure. "Are you Naruto, and if you are, why are you like that?" she said, glancing at Naruto. "And that is my story up to this point. As for my appearance, it started when I was taking down Mizuki and was calling upon Kyuubi's chakra for the first time. Since then, it has appeared a few times, but this seems to have a more permanent effect. I am Naruto, and as for my appearance, I'm going to need to explain from the beginning. Please save your questions until I stop talking. Too lazy to explain the whole story, so imagine that he told the story of the 4th and that Kyuubi is sealed within him." A flashback to when the sound generator first appeared in Naruto's mindscape. As he appeared back in Kyuubi's room and backed up against her cell, Naruto was running through the various halls in his mind, being chased by waves of dark chakra. The dark chakra grabbed hold of Naruto and began to devour him whole, but Kyuubi emerged from the shadows of her cell and blasted the dark chakra back into the depths of Naruto's mind. "That was a close one, Kyuubi." Kyuubi glared at him. "Can you explain why waves of alien chakra are currently coursing through your body?" "I don't know," shrugged Naruto. "I lost consciousness after being bitten by a strange grass genin because of a mark that developed on my arm. That dark chakra then started chasing me around in here." "Your arm developed a mark after you were bitten? You have a curse seal on you, Naruto, and it appears determined to use its chakra to corrupt your body. God damn it. Is there any way to get rid of it?" said Naruto, looking concerned. "There are a number of methods, but they all call for a lot of chakra, and I'm not sure how your chakra coils could withstand that much strain before blowing up. Additionally, the targeted region may be blown off, which is never a good thing." The idea of having body parts blown made Naruto shiver. "Is there anything we can do to mitigate the effects?" "Well, we could always use a medium that will be able to absorb the dark chakra rather than forcefully expelling it from your body, but the only thing on hand that we can possibly use is your sword." Kyuubi halted Naruto just as he was ready to leave the mind, saying, "So be it, then. Naruto, exposing your body to so much of my chakra can have further negative repercussions. First of all, it has the potential to permanently transform you into a half-demon, but its effects will only manifest during specific months, allowing you to appear normally most of the time. I'm not exactly sure what can happen, but there might be other consequences." With a somber expression, Naruto said, "I'll stop at nothing to remove this mark from my body." After awakening, Naruto drew his katana and touched the curse mark with the point of the weapon. "Are you ready, Kyuubi?" Kyuubi began to concentrate a significant amount of chakra around the curse seal, and Naruto sensed that it was developing around it. "Give me a few seconds. Do it, now." The sword gave off a very menacing aura, and Naruto quickly sheathed it and sealed it into a scroll to keep it for later. As Kyuubi simultaneously released the chakra, forcing the curse seal's chakra into the sword that absorbed the combined chakra, Naruto hissed in pain as he felt the seal being forced away from his arm and infusing into the sword. He felt the dark charka recede into the sword and slowly pulled the sword from his arm, wincing as he felt the blade slide out of his arm. After a few long seconds, Naruto stood back up, breathing heavily, and observed that his hands now had claws and that something was flowing behind him. He turned around to see several tails behind him and quickly tried to contact Kyubi. "Kyubi, you there?" He looked at the mark where the curse seal was, and in its place was a large scar in the form of the curse seal that was on his skin seconds ago. He was about to give a sigh of relief when he felt a pulse of Kyubi's charka pulse through his body and he fell to the ground on all fours, fox features beginning to appear over his body. With a feeble voice, Kyubi answered, "Yes, Naruto. I'm present. It appears that I used a little too much charka to remove the seal, and the extra has temporarily changed you." Kyubi groaned weakly and said, "Now, if you will excuse me, I am going to take a short nap. You are going to be stuck like that for a bit." Sasuke had just finished knocking out the two male sound genin and was now bearing down on the lone female genin that was standing near Sakura. Naruto quickly tried to speak to Kyubi again, but all attempts were met with unanswered responses. Naruto quickly left his mind as he felt a great surge of dark charka and quickly turned to its source. Naruto vanished in a flash and quickly stopped Sasuke with a quick jutsu that put the receiver into a dreamless sleep. Flashback termination. Sakura was unable to speak and simply kept her gaze fixed on Naruto. "Sakura, get over it. You know, I'm still Naruto. The female behind you, though, is who?" Naruto gestured to Kin, who was attempting to conceal herself behind Sakura at the moment. Sakura awoke from her reverie and said, "Her name is Kin. Although she is one of the sound genin, I don't believe she enjoys the other two." "So, you were on the team with the other two?" Naruto approached Sakura and pushed her away so he could examine Kin. "You have been mistreated by your teammates, haven't you?" he asked, giving her a close look. Though she thought she had kept it well hidden from everyone back in the Sound Village, Kin could only nod silently and marvel how this person, or rather, the fox person, could analyze her so readily. "I see that you live in constant terror of your teammates and the potential physical and psychological harm they could cause you. In what method would you desire to escape all of that?" The offer caused Kin's eyes to brighten, but they soon narrowed in suspicion. "Why are you doing this? Are you going to make you a prisoner or hold me captive?" Naruto took a step back and asked, "Is there a reason I should hold you captive? You haven't acted hostilely against Sakura or Sasuke, and I can see by the look in your eyes that you wish to leave the life you're in right now." He held out his hand. Naruto pulled her up as Kin hesitantly accepted his hand. "Now, that wasn't hard. Now to get you to somewhere safe and where questions won't be asked." Naruto called forth a medium-sized fox, which bowed to him respectfully. "Kin, this fox will take you somewhere safe and you shouldn't be found and you will be well protected," Naruto whispered in its ear, and the fox nodded in response. Kin leapt on the fox's back, and it began to move immediately, giving Kin hardly enough time to hang onto it. "Sakura, you ought to get some sleep now that we've taken care of things." Sakura wanted to object, but Naruto's stern look forced her to keep her mouth shut and comply with his request. "You have been standing watch for too long, and you need to keep your strength up for the rest of this exam." Naruto tied Dosu and Zaku to a tree a short distance from where Sasuke and Sakura were, then sat down to wait for them to regain consciousness. 2 hours later, after Dosu and Zaku awoke and shook their heads to clear the fog around their eyes, they attempted to move their arms but soon discovered that they were bound against the tree. They searched for the person who might have bound them and discovered Naruto sitting in a tree's shadow, scowling at them and saying, "Hey you, come over here or untie us. Did you really think I would be kind enough to let you go after attacking my team and threatening to kill Sasuke?" Naruto said, his stare hardening as he stood up. "Before I torment you to within an inch of your life, I want to gather some information. Either the easy way or the hard approach can be used for this." "Ha, do your best, which I doubt is going to be much," Zaku said, laughing aloud. With a cruel grin, Naruto emerged from the tree's shadow, displaying his fox ears and tails, which were flapping wildly behind him. "I was hoping you would say that." He landed on them, and soon after, cries erupted from the vicinity, reverberating throughout the forest of death. After about 30 minutes, when he reached the clearing, Sakura had already woken up and was caring for a still slumbering Sasuke. "So, how is he holding up?" Naruto asked himself, as he walked back to where he had left a clone to watch over Sakura and Sasuke. Zaku and Dosu were still tied against the tree, muttering incoherently, and had cuts and several missing body parts. Naruto considered all the information he had received, particularly regarding the man who had ordered them to attack Sasuke. When Sakura looked up, she noticed that Naruto had lost his fox traits, but she said, "He's sleeping peacefully and there are no signs of those weird marks on his body." After examining the sun's location in the sky, Naruto said, "We need to move out." "But Naruto, Sasuke is resting and we can't disturb him." "Sakura, I apologize. We have to reach the tower as soon as possible because time is running out. We may still have 2 days, but we need to account for anything that can make it more difficult for us to reach the tower. We can draw Sasuke's attention to that mark on his back more quickly if we arrive at the tower sooner. Near the start of the exam, I was able to obtain an earth scroll." Sakura nodded, saying, "All right, Naruto." After 3 hours, the tower could be seen, and Sakura was now in front of Naruto, who was carrying Sasuke on his back. They landed in front of the tower, and Sasuke began to shift on Naruto's back. What the heck happened? He fell to the ground as Naruto said, "Ow, what on earth was that used for? While you were out in Dreamland, I was holding you for the past 3 hours." They opened the doors and were met with a large, empty hall except for a banner with several lines written on it. They all read it, looked at the heaven and earth scroll they had gathered, and looked at each other before opening the scrolls. "You have 2 legs, use them," he said, offering Sasuke a hand, which Sasuke accepted. When Iruka emerged from the smoke, everyone exhaled in relief. Smoke started to billow out of the scrolls, so they placed them on the ground and looked at them suspiciously until a familiar voice murmured, "Congratulations on passing the second part of the exam. We were afraid that someone would assault us, Iruka Sensei. In any case, why is that enormous banner hanging on the wall over there?" Becoming a chunin is symbolized by that banner. Earth stands for power, and heaven for knowledge. You are prepared to become a chunin if you possess both qualities. You may take this time to relax and do anything you want because you arrived here a day early. Sasuke headed out to try to get some more training before the 3rd exam, while Sakura went off to find a place to relax when Naruto said something about inspecting his blades. With Naruto while sitting in front of his katana, Naruto stared at the dark aura that emanated from it. He got up, walked over, and picked up the sword. Almost immediately, dark marks began to appear on Naruto's skin, beginning on his hand and creeping up his arm. He let out a cry of alarm, sheathed it once more, and threw it to the other side of the room, where it appeared innocuous but still had the dark aura emanating from it. He sealed it back into the scroll and left to investigate the tower, saying, "I'm going to need Kyuubi's help for this, and since she is still out of commission, I'll have to deal with it later." Hinata, "So, I see you managed to pick up one of my little foxes." The little fox yipped happily and ran circles before returning to Hinata. "And it seems had taken a liking to you," Hinata said, as she was strolling aimlessly through the tower with the fox she had picked up from the forest resting contentedly on her shoulder. She attempted to pet it, but it had fled off her shoulder and rushed down the hall she was walking. She chased after it and discovered it at someone's feet. "Hinata, how was the forest?" Looking at Naruto, Hinata began to repeat how her team had received their second scroll soon after the exam began and had hurried as fast as they could to the tower, passing the Sand Genin team and being terrified of one of them, a red-haired boy with whom Naruto had an instant connection to Gaara. "What exactly did he do, Hinata-chan?" As she recalled the incident, Hinata shuddered. "We paused to watch the Suna team, and I had just discovered the fox. They appeared to be at a disadvantage because they were playing a Kiri team. We didn't grasp Orochimaru's and the fox's trembling and warnings until he brutally crushed the Kiri team in the sand to kill them. We immediately froze when he threw his sand at us, realizing that we were going to die, but one of his friends was able to dissuade him from killing any more people, and they departed the area to our immense relief. After that, we were here in roughly 4 hours. Since then, we have been sleeping. Naruto.kun, how is the forest for you?" Naruto stroked his right arm, where the curse seal had been, and said, "Our team was attacked by several other teams, but it wasn't anything that we couldn't handle." "What's wrong with your arm, Naruto?" Hinata asked, observing the area that Naruto was massaging. Naruto swiftly turned aside after glancing down at Hinata, saying, "It's nothing, Hinata." Bandages were wrapped around Naruto's arm when Hinata pulled up his sleeve. "What happened, Naruto?" He seemed black and tore his arm from Hinata's hold. "I didn't say anything, Hinata. I have to leave now, if you don't mind." He left a confused and injured Hinata behind and hurried off. A short while later, Naruto sighed and wondered if he had been too aggressive in protecting his scar, so he went to his resting quarters and lay on the bed in the hopes of getting some rest. Naruto was sitting against the wall, unwrapping the bandages on his arm. and all that was left of the curse seal was a nasty scar with charcoal burns and an odd mark that indicated that a curse mark had been there. In another section of the tower, while Sasuke was exercising on some wooden dummies, a certain snake man and his faithful aide were watching him in the shadows. A quiet, greasy voice said, "How is he doing? Where are the sound genin I sent out?" "Sasuke is responding well to the curse seal, though we don't know how much he had used it," Kabuto said in a gentle, low voice. "I searched the forest for the sound genin and discovered Dosu and Zaku, who were bound to a tree and had multiple huge wounds. They were murmuring something I couldn't make out. I have tended to their injuries and administered a medication to keep them asleep without dreams. I'm still searching for Kin, but she vanished someplace in the jungle. All right, I anticipate results in a few days. You are aware of your current orders, and I anticipate that you will complete them flawlessly. You get it?" "Yes, Master." Kabuto bowed before vanishing into the darkness. "Ku. Sasuke-kun, I'll be holding you in my hands soon." Out of all the genin to enter, some of the youngest and rawest have passed away. The Hokage stepped forward and addressed the genin, clearing his throat as he said, "I am proud to address all of you who have passed the second exam. But these exams serve another purpose other than the promotion of genin." The majority of the genin wore confused expressions and turned back to the Hokage for more explanations. 6 teams were lined up in front of the Hokage, and he could only glance down and make a quick observation. "I would like to congratulate everyone who passed the chunin exam's second section. I would want to explain the purpose of these exams before we move on to the next section. Many of you probably think that this is merely a test to advance to the rank of chunin, but there's another reason that you might not know about." When the majority of the genin heard that statement, their faces were filled with perplexity. In a nutshell, the chunin tests may be described as a tiny conflict. Other ninja villages have sent their own ninja to compete in these, as you have all seen, not only to give them an opportunity to showcase their ninja but also to see how strong other hidden communities are. The lords of the land and prospective employers are drawn to these tests. So without much ado, a blur appeared in front of the Hokage, and he said, "Pardon me, Hokage-sama, but would you allow me, Gecko Hayate, proctor of the third exam, to present the rules?" The Hokage nodded, and Hayate, who had a coughing fit but recovered, continued to cough every few words. "Is there anyone who would like to drop out now before we start this exam?" After a little period of stillness, Kabuto held out his hand and said, "Yakushi Kabuto, correct? You are free to go." He walked out of the room while one pair of eyes gave him a dubious glance. "If everyone else is staying, I am here to state that we need to have preliminaries before we start with the third exam." Ino shouted incredulously, "Are you serious? You want us to battle each other to advance to the next round after we just made it through the forest?" After a little cough, Hayate said, "If you disagree, you are free to leave." Ino immediately grew agitated. "As I was saying, we will be having 1 versus 1 match," Hayate said. "Any jutsu can be used to cripple your opponent. When the opponent is unable to fight or when I call it, the contest is done. The first fighter's identities will show up on the screen behind me. Would those warriors kindly stay on the ground while the others ascend to the balcony above?" Behind the monument of the Ram Seal, a screen with the names Akadu Yoroi vs Uchiha Sasuke appeared. In canon, this fight goes as usual. When the screen flashed once more, the names Tenten vs Nara Shikamaru were displayed. Tenten had her own cheer squad with Lee and Guy, shouting something about the power of youth, as Shikamaru murmured something that sounded like trouble. The two fighters descended to the bottom and engaged in combat. Tenten was growing irritated at the boy's obvious lack of excitement, while Shikamaru's look and stance made it obvious that he didn't want to be there right now. He was also muttering something about having to battle a lady. Hayate lifted his hand and lowered it. "Hajime." Tenten instantly leapt back, and Shikamaru measured the distance she had covered. A reasonable distance to attack and defend from is roughly 4 paces away. When different weapons were hurled at him and he had to hop to the side to avoid them, he was startled out of his reverie. Shikamaru was covered in cuts and had multiple regions of his body where weapons had struck him after roughly 2 minutes. Tenten had not yet perspired, although he was panting heavily. With a slight smirk, she said, "Ready to give up yet?" With assurance. Shikamaru calmly answered, "As if I would ever choose to lose to a girl." Tenten's forehead developed a fairly significant tick mark as a result of these words. After jumping a few more times, she placed 2 scrolls a few feet apart and said, "You're going to play for saying those words." After going through a number of hand signals while standing in the center, she leapt into the air, followed by scrolls. Dual Rising Dragon. She began to spin around and summon the weapons from the scrolls. unleashing an endless stream of weaponry that Shikamaru found very difficult to avoid. He was still standing when he emerged, albeit he had more scratches than he would have wanted. Tenten muttered a snarl and spoke out with assurance. She flipped her hands, and a wave of wire glowed in the light, joining her hands to the weapons that were scattered on the ground. You may have been able to avoid my first wave of attacks, but you won't be able to dodge this. When Shikamaru had the opportunity to attack, his eyes glowed and he immediately went through hand seals. Tenten lost all control of her body and fell back to the ground just as she was ready to whip the weapons at Shikamaru. What the heck did you do to me? Kageme no Jutsu, a success. Tenten was attached to Shikamaru by a long, thin shadow. He knelt down and picked up a weapon from the floor that was scattered all over the floor, and Tenten did the same. Well, it seems that we are at a stalemate until I run out of charka, but fortunately that isn't in my plans. Tenten's eyes widened as he withdrew the weapon, wielding arm. Tenten released her weapon after Shikamaru disregarded her warning, saying, "You can't be serious? If I am copying your movements and you are throwing that, we are both going to hurt ourselves seriously." Tenten was about to gaze at the approaching wall when Shikamaru abruptly leaned over from his waist and released his cage main jutsu, causing her face to crash into the wall and knock her out. The weapons were only a few inches from their faces. Shikamaru landed on his feet after flipping around. A shrewd shinobi is aware of their surroundings. Winner of the first match, Nara Shikamaru. Once more, the screen flashed, revealing the matchup between Inazaka Kiba and Uzumaki Himura Naruto. Naruto simply leapt to the ground and stared passively at Kiba, who was jubilantly celebrating his preemptive triumph, while Kiba declared that the fight would be easy. "Are you not the self-assured one?" calmly, Naruto said. He crouched down and shoved Akamaru aside, stating, "I've grown stronger since we have graduated from the academy and I'm not even going to use Akamaru to defeat you." Akamaru whimpered a few times, urging Kiba not to underestimate Naruto, but Kiba disregarded him. As a reaction, Naruto knocked an arrow into his bow and prepared it for impact. "Are you going to attack me with a bow and arrow?" Kiba mockingly said, "You will never hit me with that." Kurenai shook her head at his conceit and saw what she thought was a pitying glare from Kakashi as she looked at his response to the fight. Hajime. When Kiba heard rubble moving, he turned around and saw Naruto dusting himself off while holding a broken in half bow in one hand. Kiba then rushed forward, surprising Naruto with his quick movement and slamming his shoulder into Naruto's gut, slamming him into the opposite wall. The wall was heavily dented, and Kiba brashly told the proctor to call the match. "Kiba, was that all you had? Because you wouldn't have much of a chance to beat me if it was." Kiba clenched his jaw and said, "Akamaru, hurry up. Let's go beat Naruto." Akamaru gave a few little yips and leapt beside Kiba. "Get ready to lose, Teme." Kiba threw a smoke bomb at Naruto's feet, and it exploded, sending Akamaru after him. However, he was pushed by a sharp gust of wind before he could run into the smoke, and the smoke dissipated, leaving Naruto in the center with his Sakabato. "That jerk that is incapable of cutting." Naruto's eyes narrowed in irritation but kept a calm demeanor. Kiba fed a soldier pill to Akamaru, turning his fur red and allowed him to turn in change into a replica of Kiba. "Let's go, Akamaru." Getsuga. Akamaru and Kiba both transformed into whirling claw vortices and charged in Naruto's direction. A mistaken stride by Naruto, who was just able to avoid the claws, allowed Kiba to strike him squarely in the chest, sending him reeling backward and landing in a heap a few feet away. "Ha ha, loser. Hinata will see how much of a loser you are after this match and will forget about you. She'll approach me and ask to be my girlfriend. You are going to regret ever saying those words," Naruto said, rising from the ground and giving Kiba a red-eyed gaze. Big words coming from the person who is currently losing. Naruto ran at Kiba, who resisted every attack he launched at him, believing he could handle it. Naruto abruptly lost sight of him and glanced down in time to see him beneath him, with a foot striking his stomach and sending him flying into the air, and jumping up after him. "Seems you hit my afterimage, Kiba." He looked up to see Naruto above him, his sword swinging down, and Kiba came crashing down to the ground without getting up. Akamaru rushed over and attempted to help, but Naruto grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and lifted him off the ground. Kiba growled angrily at Naruto and twisted his body in the air to kick at him, but his foot went right through. When he heard Akamaru whimper, Kiba woke up groggily and saw Naruto holding the underside of his Sakabato near Akamaru's neck, saying, "Hey, let him go." "Take back what you said about Hinata," Naruto growled, glaring at him. "Never, loser." Kiba clenched his teeth and said, "Why the hell do you care so much about Hinata? She's just a girl." Naruto put his sword to Akamaru's throat, and Kiba gasped and said boldly, "Just a girl. To you, is that what Hinata is? Well, Hinata is much more than a female in my opinion. I suggest you surrender now," he said, releasing Akamaru, who rushed to Kiba's side. "She is my best friend, and possibly my girlfriend, and I am not going to let someone like you even get close to her." Kiba said, "Proctor, I surrender." He attempted to stand up, but his body refused. Kiba was led to the medical wing by a number of medics carrying a stretcher, while Naruto ascended the steps before stopping as Hinata approached him. "The winner of this match is Uzumaki Himura Naruto." Stuttering, Hinata said, "Congratulations on your victory, Naruto." They paused for a few seconds before Hayate's voice called out the next competitors. "Will Kankuro and Tsurugi Masumi please come down to the floor?" Naruto smiled slightly from beneath his mask and said, "Thanks, Hinata." The next battle ended with Kankuro leaving his opponent in a mangled heap of broken bones. The next battle was between Gaara and Lee, which left Lee with a broken body after using Omat Renge, Ura Renge, and the Celestial Gates. And the sixth battle was between Sakura and Ino, who had both fought to the end and refused to give in to each other, but defeat caught them both and they were eliminated from the exams. The seventh battle was between Shino and Choji, and despite Choji using Meatball Tank to exert pressure on Shino, he was unable to keep up with Shino and his Kakaichu bugs, which were discovered to be living inside his body when Neji examined him with his Byakugan. When the screen flashed, Hinata Hyuga vs Neji Hyuga drew the attention of every Konoha ninja present in the arena. With a fake sneer on his lips, Neji was the first to say, "Hinata Sama, I wish you no harm," after both participants had stepped to the floor and stood there staring at each other for a few seconds. "I advise you to step down before I have to hurt you. I suggest you keep your words to yourself, Neji." "Oni-san." Neji thought his words would intimidate Hinata into a submission, but instead, Hinata gazed back at him with resolute eyes. "Fate has already deemed me as the winner of this match." A frown swiftly formed on Neji's face. "So be it, then." Both of them sealed their hands. Byakugan. They both sank into the Juken stance as veins protruded around their eyes. Hajime. With charka whips flying from their fingertips, they both ran at one another and began exchanging blows. Sakura was curiously observing the fight after waking up from her struggle with Ino. "Kakashi. Sensei, what type of fighting stance is that? Though I am not totally clear about it, I believe it to be the strongest styles of taijutsu in the Leaf Village, the Hyuga style, Juken." Guy, who had been listening, made the decision to elaborate. The Hyuga had utilized their bloodline, which allows them to see the charka points in a human body, into their own Juken stance, targeting the charka points in the body to disable their opponents and defeat them. A grazing hit by a Hyuga could spell for dangerous results and all of their attacks involved charka. As Hinata and Neji continued their struggle for supremacy, Hinata saw a tiny gap. Neji skidded several steps back after she kicked him in the gut. He charged once more, and Hinata charged with her hand poised to strike when Neji caught it. "Well, it seems you have learned some new tricks, but that won't be enough to defeat me." There were multiple red dots visible on her arm when he pulled back her sleeve. He hit her in the chest and pushed her away with a double charka palm punch to her stomach, saying, "Ah, you can see Hinata Sama, your fate was sealed when you were chosen to fight me." Coughing up blood, she clutched her stomach as she collapsed to the ground. Neji moved away from Hinata and began to walk, saying, "Proctor, I suggest you call this match. I will not be responsible for anything that will happen if this continues." Neji spun around and growled fiercely, "Running away from me, Neji? Running away from your so-called fate that you are meant to defeat me?" Though it was the Juken, Hinata had returned to her combat position. Rather, she had her hands at her sides, her legs slightly apart, and she was calmly looking back. Neji smirked confidently. "You think you can defeat me? You can't even use charka now. An." Neji is claiming that she is unable to use charka because he attacked with a double charka palm and, I suppose, charka is extracted from the stomach. Neji shouted, "Why don't you come forth and try, Oni-san?" and dove at her, intending to silence her forever, but she grabbed him with her outstretched arms, tripped him with his forward momentum, and he rushed forward with one hand forward, aiming for Hinata's face. She blocked his hand at his wrist, then immediately followed up with a kick square to his chin, spinning quickly on one foot and kicking him in the side. "Enough of this foolishness. Hinata, you are in the range of my divination." Neji sprang up fiercely, and before Neji could attack, Hinata's eyes could only widen in disbelief. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. Hake Rokujui and Sho. Now time to finish this once and for all. Neji jumped up and aimed for Hinata's heart as he flew back and crumpled on the ground, coughing up more blood from earlier. Several bodies moved in a split second, and Neji soon discovered him with Hayate's fingertips on his Hitate and Guy's hand on his arm. I see this as favoritism for the main house of the Hyuga, Neji said. Hate stated, in actuality, this is for your own protection. Neji saw the blade hovering perilously near his throat and turned to his right to see Kakashi and Kurenai holding Naruto. His eyes had turned a deep crimson, as if he wished for Neji's death at that very moment. A number of medics hurried out, placing her on a stretcher and rushing her to the medic ward. The Junin left of their captives and each of them sent each other a glare that caused the arena's temperature to drop several degrees. Naruto stewed on the floor, swiping up some of Hinata's blood. He grasped it around his sword and pointed it at Neji, saying, "On Hinata's blood, I promise to defeat you." He sheathed his sword and stalked back up the stairs. Simply scoffing, Neji said to himself, "A loser making a promise to a loser. How pathetic." The 8 finalists lined up on the floor after Hayate announced that Temari would automatically advance to the next round due to a lack of competitors. Now, we will be drawing lots for the finals to determine your opponents. Each competitor reached into the box containing the lots at that point. Sasuke. 8 Shikamaru. 6. Naruto. 1 Gaara. 7. Kankuro. 3. Shino. 4. Neji. 2 Temari. 5. The matches have been decided. Naruto will face Neji, Kankuro will face Shino, Temari will face Shikamaru and Gaara will face Sasuke. The finals will occur a month and a half from now. Use that time to train yourself for the finals. And remember, many nobles and lords will be coming from all over the lands, so uphold the strength and honor of your village. Later that day, a strange girl was sitting in his living room caressing what appeared to be a huge fox when Kenshin returned home. He immediately explained her role and the reason she was sent here, and Kenshin accepted it. He then prepared her some tea and waited for Naruto to arrive. Kenshin, so did you like proctoring for the exams? Naruto asked, sitting at the table after arriving later than expected because of the exams. According to Kenshin, it was certainly interesting. Met an interesting woman, too. He put down his teacup. Under his disguise, Naruto flashed a cunning smile. Did you already get a girlfriend? Kenshin glared at him, and Naruto couldn't help but smile as though he was correct. It's none of your business, Naruto, to try to snoop about in Kenshin's personal affairs. Okay, mother, whatever you say. Actually, it's more like an acquaintance. Her name is Anko. The one wearing the fishnet shirt with the overcoat and skirt. Kin said, that crazy lady, she gives me the creeps. I believe there is a reason why she acts that way and I believe I know the reason why. But aside from that, Naruto, I think it is time that I started training you in the style of hidden Mitsurugi. Ryu. Along with that, I have asked the village's leading swordsman to help in this training. This training is in preparation for the finals coming in a month and a half. Are you up for the challenge? Good, now for you Kin. It seems that Orochimaru is planning something. Do you know what? Naruto said with a little nod. He is planning to destroy the Leaf Village. He secretly made an alliance with the Sand Village and is expecting their help in the destruction. I heard Gaara was going to be a major component, but I never heard what his actual purpose would be. We will need to share this information with the Hokage. Tomorrow, we will go to the Hokage's office to tell him and we will figure out what to do from there, said Kenshin, gazing down intently. Sounds like a plan, Kenshin. Currently in the Hokage's office, Kenshin, Naruto, and Kin were describing Orochimaru's potential purpose in the village. Sarutobi listened solemnly, and after they were finished, he rose from his seat and gazed out his window, which overlooked the hamlet. Kin had another comment all of a sudden. I forgot to mention this to you yesterday, but I think Orochimaru wants to do with Uchiha Sasuke. We were ordered to kill him for some reason, but we never knew that he would have had a curse seal. Sarutobi sighed deeply as he turned around. It was obvious that he was getting too old for his role. Well, now we have 2 separate problems, the upcoming invasion and Sasuke. As for now, all I can think of is installing more patrols around the gates to watch for any suspicious movement, but I can't do much else without alerting that we know what he is doing. Therefore, I am appointing you, Kenshin, to go recruit anyone you deem necessary to help us counter this threat. I may not be able to act in the open, but someone who has just joined our ranks may be able to find enough people to counter this. I give you the rights to do anything necessary. As for Sasuke, this is quite disturbing. We can't allow Orochimaru to get his hands on the Sharingan. I will be assigning 2 Anbu to shadow him to make sure he doesn't get into any trouble. Sarutobi exhaled deeply. Alright, you are dismissed. Outside the tower of the Hokage, Kin nodded and turned to head back toward the apartment. Kin, I suggest you go back to the apartment. You should stay low until this has blown over. Kenshin vanished in a whirlpool of leaves, and Naruto headed for the grounds. Naruto, I'm going to follow her to make sure nothing happens to her. I will meet you at training ground number 11. When Naruto got there, he noticed a figure standing beside a number of training posts. He approached the man and identified him as the preliminary proctor. Hayate. Sama, what are you doing here? After turning back, Hayate spoke to Naruto. He drew his sword from the strap on his back and said, Your guardian, Kenshin, suggested that I come out and help with your training. He didn't elaborate other than the fact he needed a ninja that was proficient in Kenjutsu, and I was chosen by the Hokage. I think I know why I am here though. Kenshin chose this time to show up. I see you have acquainted each other, but now is the time for business. Naruto here has a month and a half to prepare for the finals, and I want him to prepare him by improving his Kenjutsu skills. Obviously, as a ninja, normal sword skills won't be enough, which is why I will be teaching the ancient art of hidden. Mitsurugi. Ryu, while Hayate you will be teaching him ninja skills that can be combined with swords. Kenshin produced a katana of his own. Hayate saw Kenshin's gaze and knew right away that. Now, let's begin with a skill assessment. Naruto was just able to observe the quiet conversation before Kenshin and Hayate launched an instant attack, which put him on the defensive. After being attacked for a few minutes, cuts in his shirt were visible despite his best efforts to deflect or dodge their attacks. With his teeth clenched, Naruto considered how he could combat both simultaneously. He crossed his fingers in a cross shape as soon as he recognized what he could do to level the playing field. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He instructed a Naruto clone that materialized beside him to confront Hayate. Before being disarmed and having his clone destroyed by Hayate's Crescent Moon assault, Naruto managed to hold his own against Kenshin for a few more minutes. I'm not positive if it is the name of the attack, but whatever. Well, you have demonstrated elements of hidden Mitsurugi Ryu in your sword style, and years of traveling with me have rubbed off on me. Naruto, I want you to make a clone, and Hayate will teach that one while I have you. Naruto created another clone and sent it with Hayate. This procedure continued for a significant amount of the day before coming to an end when the sun began to set. After completing their individual sessions for the day, Kenshin and Hayate met at a nearby bar to discuss Naruto and his abilities. A woman wearing a lavender fishnet stumbled into the pub after they had both ordered something light to drink. When Hayate gripped Kenshin's arm and made a face that made it obvious that he didn't want to get involved, Kenshin started to get up and help Anko, but he gently sat down again. Morose faced, Anko ordered a pretty large bottle of sake and began pouring herself glass after glass of it as she sat down at the bar. I can't let someone drink away at whatever is bothering them, Hayate. I am going to have to cut our chat short this time. As Kenshin approached Anko, Hayate placed some money on the counter and said, I understand. It's about time for me to be getting home anyway. I'll see you tomorrow. When Anko felt the bottle being yanked from her grasp, she was pouring herself another glass. She spun around and was about to confront the offender when her hand got caught. Who the hell do you think you are stealing my? Anko noticed that Kenshin had a mildly worried expression on his face. Kenshin finished the sake in the bottle and set it on the counter, saying, I think you've had enough to drink for tonight. He took Anko's hand and said, Come on, let's go get some air. Anko flushed at the intimate touch. A few minutes later, on a bench in a park, as Anko struggled to determine her feelings for Kenshin, Kenshin gazed at the stars. God damn you. Kenshin gave Anko a look. Oro. Anko had now gotten to his feet and was accusing Kenshin. Why the hell do you care so much? Kenshin might give her a perplexed look. What do you mean, Anko? Dono. Anko exploded in his face at that very moment. Why must you care about me? Why can't you just let me handle my own problems on my own? Helping someone in need doesn't require a justification, or would prefer not to have my assistance, Kenshin answered in a composed manner. When Anko's eyes flashed with rage, she punched him hard in the face, leaving him whirly-eyed and with a big bruise on his face. She vanished and ended up walking back on the streets, leaning against a wall to calm herself. At that moment, a number of inebriated chunin and junin were strolling down the same street, all of them eyeing Anko simultaneously with lecherous grins, and one of them said, Hey there, sweet thing. How would you want to keep my friends and I entertained? Get away from me, Anko spat in the speaker's face while glaring at them. The group pressed down on Anko, grabbing her chest and beginning to undress her. Why the hell am I so weak right now? I would normally be able to fight off creep like these guys, the speaker said, firmly grabbing her and pushing her against the wall. You're going to regret ever saying that. She was interrupted by a loud crack and opened her eyes. She observed what was likely the most menacing look on Kenshin's face. I suggest you leave Anko. Dono alone if you don't want to end in the hospital or on your deathbed. Like we're going to pay attention to you, jerk. With kunai in hand, they charged him, saying, we have you outnumbered. So be it, then. Kenshin took out his katana and swiftly slashed the first man across the chest, leaving a thin trail of blood behind. He then spun around and struck the second man square in the head with his sheath, knocking him unconscious. He then charged the next person and rammed his sword's hilt into the target's throat, causing him to cough up blood and pass out. The group's leader began to flee as soon as he realized that his group had been wiped out in a matter of seconds, which Kenshin saw right away. He sheathed his sword and spun in place. Hidden. Mitsurugi. Ryu. Horyuzen. The man fell face first into the mud as the blade struck him in the back of the skull. Now time for you to get your punishment for punching me in the face and giving this bruise. Now time for you to get your punishment for punching me in the face and giving this bruise. Kenshin pulled back his fist, and Anko closed her eyes before the impact on her face. After waiting for a few seconds without experiencing any pain, she opened her eyes and saw that Kenshin's face was inches away from her own. Just remember that you are never alone. Kenshin left a confused Anko sitting on the ground, unsure of what to do. She picked herself up off the ground and kicked one of the downed ninja on the head to relieve her frustrations before heading home. With Anko and Kurenai the following day, Kurenai had seen that Anko was acting somewhat more reserved than usual as they were eating lunch together. Anko, what's wrong? You're not talking as much as you usually do. Rising from her plate of food, Anko said, I'm not feeling very hungry. Kurenai touched Anko's forehead and said, are you feeling alright? Is something wrong with you? She looked away from Kurenai and sighed deeply as Anko wiped away her hand and said, I told you I'm feeling fine. Kurenai identified the symptoms right away and said, someone is in love. Red-faced, Anko spun around in her chair and exclaimed, I'm not in love. Kurenai leaned forward and said, your expression in response to what I said tell me otherwise. So, who is it? With a heavy flush on her cheeks, Anko drew away from Kurenai and bent forward to speak in her ear, seeming uncomfortable. Is he not the new Junin who proctored your second exam and was elevated by the Hokage? Why him? Anko nodded. So, how is it between you and Asuma? Anko said in response. Kurenai sputtered and spat out water when she drank from her glass. They talked for a long time until someone asked, what are you talking about? After 3 weeks, while on a nightly patrol. As they patrolled the city at night, Hayate and Kenshin talked about Naruto's amazing training development. In addition to learning many of the techniques under Hayate's tutelage, Naruto has mastered nearly all of the hidden Mitsurugi, Ryu and Batojutsu skills. In order to patrol more quickly and cover more land, they had made the decision to divide up. Hayate heard conversation when he was walking past a location. The Sand Junin and the Leaf Genin who had fallen out of the Genin exams during the preliminary round were the two individuals he was able to identify by sneaking up as near as he could. Upon hearing that they were discussing a weapon that would be used to destroy Konoha, he hurried to try and inform the Hokage of the situation. He thought he was being pursued while he was leaping from building to building. He chose to fight first after turning around and realizing the Sand Junin was pursuing him. Dance of the Crescent Moon. He had hit him in the upper part of his shoulder, but the Junin's flak jacket had prevented his blade from penetrating it. Hayate could only watch as the Junin's hand approached him and began to tear him to pieces after he smirked and prepared a jutsu. Concurrently with Gaara was gazing at the moon when he sensed another encroaching presence coming and began to murmur to himself once more, this time expressing that his mother would be pleased. There was a veiled man behind Gaara who asked, the moon is certainly beautiful tonight, isn't it? Yes, it does, now die. Gaara ordered a huge sand tsunami to rush in and swallow the unfortunate victim, but the sand was repelled out by a round dome of red charka that encircled the figure. Gaara chose to attack in a new way after he watched in shock as his sand was pushed back. He wrapped his charka about himself, and they became into whips. He hurled them at the cloaked figure, but it was in vain since the red charka dome dissolved the whips once more. Gaara gathered all of his sand about him, growing more and more irate by the moment. Sand burial, he exclaimed, forcing the sand to compress down around the figure. However, the red charka burst outward in a wave of heat, turning all of Gaara's sand into glass. The figure smashed the glass dome around him with a punch. The shrouded man removed his hood to show Naruto with fox ears, saying, "Are you done trying to kill me? Because I'm not here to fight you." "You again. Mother will enjoy tasting your blood." Gaara began to encircle himself in sand, creating a claw that resembled sand. Naruto had already rushed behind him and caught him before he swung at him. Naruto applied a seal to Gaara's head, which glowed and momentarily sealed Gaara's chakra, saying, "Not today, my friend." In an unsuccessful attempt to shape part of his chakra, Gaara tore the seal off his head. He staggered a few paces away from Naruto and into a weak fighting position. "What did you do to me?" He ran up to Gaara's and grasped his head, saying, "I sealed away you chakra, both normal and demon. I think it's time to have a chat with your inner demon." Before Gaara felt his thoughts being drawn in a different direction, all he could see in Naruto's eyes were fox irises. In the mindscape of Gaara, the corridors of Gaara's mind were largely deserted as Kyuubi in her human form and Naruto wandered around. Kyuubi, his mind is surprisingly quiet for someone who is quite insane. Kyuubi surveyed the area. The boy is socially awkward and has distanced himself from others. It's not exactly the ideal way to mature when you have a crazy devil in your head. At that moment, they heard a far-off savage howl coming from further down the hall. "I had heard rumors when I was still free that Shukaku had been sealed into a boy to make a living weapon, and I suppose this is the result. Well, I think we should meet our demon friend now." The chains that held Shikaku in place were worn and appeared to be about to shatter when they entered a big space that resembled a gigantic stone cave. "It's been too long, Shukaku." It approached, a huge figure looming from behind the bars. Looking down at Kyuubi and Naruto, Shukaku asked, "Who is disturbing me right now?" "Kyuubi, I see it's you. However, I'm not familiar with the other one. I call this guy my container." Shukaku let out a loud laugh. "So the powerful Kyuubi has yielded to a brat and a human." Kyuubi returned the stern glare. "At least my container can clean your floor without causing any discomfort. However, my container and I are here to talk about your influence on your container, not to quarrel or fight." Kyuubi was yelled at by Shukaku. "You enter here, insult me, and then expect me to pay attention to what you have to say?" Until Naruto intervened, Kyuubi and Shukaku kept hurling insults and remarks back and forth until Kyuubi said, "We are going to talk whether you like it or not, Shukaku. Will you two shut up?" "Kyuubi, I think you are losing sight of what we came here to do." Kyuubi was ashamed for arguing with Shukaku, and Shukaku had a furious expression on his face. "Look, Shukaku, I know that you want to survive and live as long as possible, correct? If so, will you allow someone to fix the seal on Gaara? For what reason would I ever want to do as you say? You want me to surrender to this new seal that will give him control when I am about to break him? Why would I take that offer at all?" A fresh voice raised its voice. Everyone turned to face Gaara when she replied, "No, I'm tired of this. I heard what Naruto has said. No more. I'm sick of killing to survive. Even my own brother and sister are afraid to look at me since you have turned me into the village's scourge. I will gladly accept closing you up if it means I may sleep with your voice whispering death words in my ear and go around without worry. You can't damage yourself. My sand will protect you no matter what," Shukaku said in her terror. "Your chakra isn't limitless and there are other ways to kill people than by weapons. Fine, but you just watch. One day, that boy is going to betray you and you are going to come back to me for power." Shukaku retreated into the darkness of his cage, realizing that Gaara's resolve could not be broken at that moment. "Kyuubi, hurry up. This is where our work is finished." In the actual world outside, "Are you prepared to have your seal mended, Gaara?" Naruto extended a helping hand to Gaara. Gaara accepted it and inquired, "How will we repair my seal?" I take it that's his name. We are going to the man known as the God of Shinobi." In the office of the Hokage, Sarutobi was about to take a long puff from his pipe and finish the last few pages of paperwork on his table when Naruto, who he recognized as one of the Sand Genin, appeared with his hood and cloak covering his fox features. "Naruto, to what do I owe this pleasure and why have you brought one of the Sand Genin with you?" Sarutobi asked. "You are aware of what is taking place." "I understand, but this is someone I believe we can bring over to our side without a fight." "I understand. Well, what are you in need of?" "I need you to fix the seal on Gaara, who is the container of the one-tailed demon, Shukaku." Sarutobi's gaze instantly conveyed comprehension. Why is his seal in need of repair? Whoever applied the seal in the past did a really bad job. It has obviously impacted his mental condition and given his monster more power than it ought to have. I'm hoping you can spare some time in your schedule to assist him. "Gaara, could you show your seal mark?" Sarutobi nodded. After taking off his shirt and turning around, Gaara revealed a seal over his left shoulder blade. Sarutobi got up from his seat and approached Gaara, carefully scrutinizing the seal for a few minutes before he spoke. It appears you were correct, Naruto. His seal is ill-positioned and has numerous flaws. Gaara nodded thoughtfully and walked out of the room without saying anything, but before Naruto could follow suit, Sarutobi interrupted, saying, I'm sorry to say, but one of you teachers was attacked tonight. Come back tomorrow, Gaara, and I will fix the seal for you. What are you discussing? It appears like someone attacked Hayate while he was on patrol. Kenshin saved him, but I was able to infer it from the circumstances. Since it would jeopardize our understanding of the impending invasion of sound, I actually am powerless to do anything about it. Naruto left the office with his head drooping, saying, I understand, Hokage-sama. The following morning, in order to learn more about what had happened with Hayate and Kenshin, Naruto had left early in order to walk to the hospital. He asked a hospital attendant where Hayate was being held and then proceeded to the room where he saw Kenshin talking to a person who appeared to be an Anbu with long purple hair. The Anbu saw Naruto and thanked him before leaving. Hayate was lying on the bed with a lot of bandages covering his chest, from his left hip to nearly his right shoulder. What happened to him, Kenshin? Something that could have been easily avoided if we had stayed together, Kenshin said, making a mournful look. We parted ways to cover more area, and it wasn't until I realized Hayate was being followed that I was able to prevent his death. His opponent appeared to have a wind-based jutsu, ready to finish him out, after blocking his crescent blade. Before he could complete his kill, I managed to hit his attacker. He glanced at Hayate and said, it looks like I'll have to go enlist the help of my old teacher because I could only knock him out from my position, and I rushed here as quickly as I could with Hayate. I hope I can recruit him before the invasion begins because I have a general idea of where he is. Until you find someone who is ready to assist you, you will have to train alone for the time being, okay? Naruto walked out of the room, leaving Kenshin to think on his own. I understand, Kenshin. When Naruto heard some quiet giggling while wandering aimlessly down the street, he looked up to see that he was close to the local hot spring and that a man with white hair was writing hastily on a notepad while peering through a peephole. Naruto gave the man a gloomy look before stealthily approaching him and saying, pervert. While the women in the hot spring were screaming and yelling to chase and beat the pervert down, the old man jumped up in shock and looked around to see who had blown his cover. He was soon surrounded by a group of women, all of whom had some kind of weapon to beat him with, and he attempted to quickly explain his predicament, but was quickly beaten into submission. A few agonizing minutes later, Naruto approached the elderly man, who was lying on the ground and moaning in agony, saying, I guess it doesn't seem that women appreciate you peeping, old man. Hearing the words, I'm not just an old man, the elderly man appeared to recover almost immediately. I am Sennin, the Toad Sennin, Jiraiya, the sacred master of Mount Myoboku. Gamma. He ended up striking a strange position, and Naruto gave him a blank stare. Do you belong to the three fabled Sannin? Jiraiya proudly puffed out his chest and said, yes, I am. It's unbelievable that one of the Sannin is a pervert and a peeping Tom. What comes next? A traitor among the other Sannin, followed by a big drinker and gambler. Kid, you hit the nail right on the head. Jiraiya could scratch his head in embarrassment at the truth of what the lad had just stated. Wait, my statement on the three Sennin was correct. Oh, Sannin is single and Sennin is plural? Jiraiya could only nod his head and bow his head in shame. I apologize, Naruto said, looking uncomfortable. In reality, I didn't mean it. Jiraiya gave him a serious look and said, Kid, war does a lot to you. Many things. Kid, what's your name? Naruto Himura Uzumaki. Hey kid, how would you like to be trained by me? I wonder if this is Minato's son. Inquiringly, Naruto raised his eyebrows and said, why would I want any training from you? Because I am among the strongest people from Konoha and I know a lot of jutsus. What are your thoughts? Kyubi, what are your thoughts? He was your father's sensei. He can help you increase the number of jutsus you have, you know. You can't always rely on your sword to win battles. Alright, Kyubi. Alright, Jiraiya. Sensei. Let's visit a training field so I can learn from you. After Jiraiya led Naruto to a local training area under a waterfall, Naruto said, so first things first, I'm going to test you on your chakra affinity, Naruto. Affinity for chakra? Yes. Every ninja has a particular connection to the 5 primary components. Jiraiya handed Naruto a piece of paper that she had taken out of a purse. This is a chakra detecting paper. All you need to do is push a small amount of chakra into it and your affinity will reveal itself. The little piece of paper was in Naruto's hand. How will I know which affinity I have? Wind will split itself in half. Water will become wet, fire will burn itself, earth will crumble and lightning will give off sparks. When Naruto pressed some chakra into the paper, it broke in two. Both parts drifted to the floor. Before Jiraiya could explain to Naruto the various wind jutsus he could teach him, a small flame burst from one corner, another grew damp, another disintegrated, and the final one gave off a feeble spark. It's interesting to note that although the youngster has a weak affinity for the other four chakras, wind is his dominating one. Since I trained Minato, I haven't seen anyone like this. This boy reminds me so much of his father, wow. But for the time being, I believe I shall concentrate on wind jutsus. Jiraiya took a scroll out of another pocket in his clothing and handed it to Naruto, saying, well, it seems that you have a knack for wind jutsus and I just happen to know some I can teach you. In there contains several wind jutsus you can learn and I will help in any way I can if you have any questions. Taking the scroll, Naruto examined the many jutsus that had been noted. He glanced up from his scroll to see Jiraiya chuckling while searching through some brush. He is already snooping on other women when I take my eyes off him for 2 seconds. Arrow. Sennin is stupid. After laughing at his moniker for Jiraiya, Naruto approached him from behind and gave him a surprise. Kyuubi was yelling at him to stop using the method that had been developed so long ago to occasionally conceal himself while he was out on the streets alone. A sensuous voice and gentle fingertips stroked across Jiraiya's shoulders as he was occupied with taking notes for his next book. The woman he saw as he turned around was, in his opinion, one of the most ideal beauties he had ever seen. In front of him was a woman with blonde hair and crimson strands in it. Jiraiya felt himself drooling at the sight before him, and he drew closer to feel up the ideal physique while thin wisps of smoke obscured the most private portions from view. Jiraiya felt cold steel on his throat as a plume of smoke passed by. Consider this a warning for the next time you decide to go peep on women while training me. How dare you, Naruto? You are aware that I banned you from using that method ever again. But it was the only way I could think to try that perverted old man away from the women to pay attention to me. Kyuubi growled deeply. All right, I'll be easy on you this time, but I'm still going to punish you, in a way that will keep you up all night. Kyuubi laughed softly, and Naruto shuddered at the thought of her punishment. Naruto had learned the several jutsus Jiraiya had given him over the course of the following few days, but he had been unable to get enough sleep because of a particular dream from Kyuubi. His thoughts was always racing because it featured a lavender girl in some fairly vivid poses and behaviors. He asked Jiraiya for a day to help him relax, and Jiraiya promptly granted his request, stating that he needed to do some research. Sitting on a park seat, Naruto leaned his head back in an attempt to get his mind off of everything that was going on in the village and would soon happen in the future, as well as his relationship with a specific lavender-eyed girl. Hinata, who had recently been discharged from the hospital, was walking around the park to get some fresh air after spending time there. Neji had managed to seriously harm her internal organs during the preliminary stages, which had nearly been deadly. After a few weeks, the medical staff determined she was well enough to leave the hospital and engage in some modest exercise. She was lost in concentration when she glanced over and noticed Naruto reclining on the seat with his eyes closed and his head leaning back. Hinata approached Naruto and took a seat beside him. She gave him a tap on the right shoulder. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Naruto opened his eyes and turned to see the source of the voice. After giving Hinata a short glance, he moved away, his face adorned with a fierce flush. He gently took her hand from his shoulder and turned to go, saying, I apologize, Hinata-chan, but I must be going. Hinata walked away with her head drooping, looking hurt. At the manor of Hyuga currently strolling around his home, Heishi stopped in the courtyard to watch Hinata enter the estate with her head lowered. Heishi tried calling his daughter, but his calls were ignored. He squinted, wondering how often Hinata had been so sad that she had failed to hear his call. Only once, during Hanabi's birth, did his wife and her mother pass away. His face was laced with anxiety as he hurried to find out about his daughter's anguish. The room of Hinata when she heard a faint knock on her door, she was laying face down on her pillow, gazing blankly at the wall. She got up, eased her door open just enough to peek outside. Yes, father? Is something the matter, Hinata? She pulled the door shut and left Heishi perplexed and furious, wondering who could have so offended Hinata. I apologize, father, but I do not feel like talking right now. Since no other clan member had yet to witness Hinata, he was aware that he wasn't the cause. With a low growl, he said, Naruto, and began moving quickly to track down Naruto and bring him to justice. On a practice field at the moment, Naruto was sitting cross-legged and muttering a single line in silence when a vengeful Heishi emerged from the trees and charged at him, his eyes burning. Heishi ran up to him and grabbed him by the throat, pinning him to the ground. "What did you do to my daughter?" Grabbing Hiashi's hand, Naruto unsuccessfully attempted to pry it away. He reached down to his sword's hilt and drove it into Hiashi's right armpit, causing his hold to snap and his arm to become numb. Heishi-sama, I haven't done anything to Hinata. Then explain to me why she is currently in her room moping around. The last I had seen her like this was when her mother had died. Nothing I or the clan could do to break her out of her misery for several days until I forced her out of her room, which I regret. But I had a duty to my clan, and it is clear now I wasn't thinking at that moment because it made her skills collapse and brought my own fury on her. But here came a certain young boy who had encouraged her to become stronger than I could have done. You are the only other person I know that can influence into such a state, and I demand to know what you did to her." Naruto instantly discovered what he had done after trying to think of it for a while. Just as he was ready to correct Heishi, it dawned on him. He dropped to the ground as his body slackened swiftly. In order to relax and straighten himself out, HR took a few deep breaths. He bowed briefly before vanishing in a whirl of leaves, saying, "I apologize for Heishi-sama, but I must leave." All Heishi could do was gaze at Naruto's recent location. "For your sake, Naruto, I hope you do." The finals eve at the beginning of the full moon, Hinata was massaging Shiro's back with his fur when he ran away and she heard a flute being played. Oh, under the influence of the full moon, she peered out her window and spotted a certain blonde-haired lad of her affection. Shiro is the name of the tiny fox that Naruto had summoned but stayed with Hinata. Naruto raised his hand to meet hers after she approached him and placed a touch on his cheek. "I'm sorry, Hinata." Hinata was perplexed and was ready to inquire when Naruto touched her lip. He was abruptly interrupted when he felt Hinata's lips touch his own. "I apologize for my coldness to you that day and without any regard to your feelings. My mind was in a great storm and wasn't thinking clearly about what was happening." Hinata drew away and said softly into his ear. She withdrew and questioned, "What is with the cute fox ears and tail?" "All is forgiven, Naruto-kun." Naruto became agitated and attempted to stammer out a reply. After responding with a giggle, Hinata moved her hand to scratch Naruto's ear. Immediately, his expression softened, and he leaned into Hinata's hand while saying a few unintelligible words that Hinata was unable to understand. Naruto put his arms around her, wishing he could never let go, as she halted her scratching and drew him into a passionate embrace. Later that evening, as he was fetching a drink of water, a particular clan head noticed the village's Jinchuriki with his arms protectively encircling his daughter, who was nestled into his chest as they discussed topics he couldn't understand. He made the decision not to sound the alarm and to avenge that boy later. The finals dawn, a number of people were gazing at the rising sun while pondering different ideas. "Today is the day, when I get my retribution. My victory will be proven by fate. I have to get back quickly." On top of the Hokage monument, a specific boy with blonde hair was looking down at the village. "Today is the day." In the stadium, all of the competitors were lined up as people poured into the stadium, and Naruto glanced over his rivals. With a smirk that made Neji appear to be the ruler of the world, Gaara gave him a direct glance and a slight gesture of gratitude, which gave Naruto comfort that Gaara would carry out Leaf's strategy to protect the village. Before arriving at the stadium, Naruto received a scroll outlining all the arrangements. He thought they were sufficient, but he had a persistent suspicion that something would go wrong. While Temari and Kankuro appeared nervous, as he assumed they would be due to the impending invasion, Shino remained as composed as ever. Shikamaru's expression made it obvious that he would prefer to be somewhere else. Naruto had a strange sensation that it had something to do with Kakashi because Sasuke had not yet appeared. Chewing on a senbon, the proctor was a chunin. They all gave their consent and proceeded to the competitor's box, while Neji and Naruto stayed on the field, staring down at each other. "Listen here. The battles will go in numerical order. The matches end when one person concedes defeat or when I call the match. The rest of you will wait up in that area over there." It was Neji who spoke first. "What are you even here, loser? Fate has already proclaimed me the winner. I made a promise to Hinata and I intend to go through with it. I never go back on my promises." In answer, Naruto pulled a bow from a scroll and prepared an arrow. A promise to that main house failure? She was destined to a life of failure, and her defeat by mind hands was a perfect show of that. Genma gave them both a look. "Hajime." When Naruto leapt back and let go of the arrow he had prepared, Neji quickly chopped it in half. Naruto fired a number of other arrows, all of which were disposed of similarly to the first. Naruto scurried up the arena wall, where he became trapped, and thought about what to do next. Impatient, Neji hurled multiple shuriken at Naruto, who deflected his bow. He sent an arrow high into the air, and everyone watched as it traveled, saying, "Let's test you, Neji." Hokage Bunshin no Jutsu. Arrow Shadow Clone Jutsu. Neji was hit by a shower of arrows that multiplied into several hundred. Kaden. Neji began to spin around, releasing Charka from his Tenketsu points and encircling himself with a sphere of Charka. When the arrows struck Neji's Kaden, several of them were either deflected or broke. Neji halted his spinning and turned to face Naruto, grinning as if he were meant to win the battle. "It seems that your arrows have not effect." Naruto put his bow down and raised his sword, saying, "I can see that, Neji-san." He whacked the ground with his sword and said, "Then, let's try this. Doryasan." Ground Dragon Strike. Neji deflected the pebbles and executed Kaden once more. So, mass doesn't matter either. With his left hand clutching the sheath, Naruto knelt down and wrapped his right hand around the Sakabado's hilt. After a few moments of staring at one another, they both rushed for one another. After taking his Sakabado out of its sheath, Naruto aimed it toward Neji's head, which he managed to avoid by a hair's breadth but still lost multiple hairs. Before sprinting back at Naruto, Neji had snarled at him after leaping back from the attack. Before Naruto overextended one of his attacks and exposed his right side, the sword fight and Juken strikes went on for several minutes without either side gaining the upper hand. Neji saw the opening instantly and, after pushing Naruto aside with his palms, rammed them into his side, leaving 2 Charka marks. "You are in range of my Hake," Neji said, and Naruto could only groan in agony. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. He closed all of his Charka points as he flew back and crashed in a heap a few yards away. A voice interrupted Neji as she turned away, saying, "Proctor, call the match, he won't be getting back up." Neji turned around and found Naruto crouched with his sword buried in the ground, which caused him to stand up. "Where are you going, Neji? This battle is far from over." "Kyubi, I need to heal my ribs and also open up my Charka points, but do it without any noticeable Charka surges." "Kid, must you make this difficult? I will do it, but you are going to need to buy yourself time while I heal you. Think you can do it?" "I think I can." "Fool, why do you still stand up? You are destined to fail like the Hyuga main house failure. Her defeat at my hands shows how weak the main house truly is. The main house deserves to suffer after everything they have done to me." Naruto had anticipated Neji's reaction to Hiyoshi's account of his life. "Well, so what? You lose your father and you grow bitter against the world and take your anger out on the main house." Neji revealed his forehead's curse seal mark after tearing off his headband. "You have no idea what it is like to be branded with curse seal and never be free from it." Naruto could sense the healing of his ribs and the near unsealing of his Charka points. He glared at Neji, who flinched when he noticed that Naruto's pupils had become slits. "Are you sure about that, Neji? You aren't the only one who has to suffer in this world. Just because you have one problem, you feel the need to blame others for your own destiny. Tell me, for attacking Hinata-chan to a state of near death when you were supposed to protect her, are you not going against your own destiny?" he said. Neji regained his composure. Neji rushed forward and was about to use a Juken attack to hit Naruto in the heart when he was blasted away by a massive wall of Charka. "It doesn't matter. Destiny has already declared the loser today." Neji attempted to gaze at Naruto, but the Charka radiating from him was too strong, forcing him to momentarily switch off his Byakugan. Neji and the audience could only gasp at Naruto once the Charka had calmed down. His shape was encased in a thin layer of crimson Charka, which also gave him what appeared to be fox ears and tail, though these were not entirely certain. Naruto gave Neji a quick glance before vanishing. Neji dodged Naruto's slash by leaping back, then spun around to attack him, only to strike an afterimage instead. "Impossible. All of your Charka points should be sealed." When he swiftly executed Kaden, Neji looked up to see Naruto descending on him. "I trained with a Hyuga for longer than you know, and you don't think I would know of a way to be able to open my Charka points. And you might want to look up," Neji said. Naruto was swiftly repelled after striking the shield. He rolled many feet on the ground after hitting it hard. "You still have not penetrated my ultimate defense, loser." With his blade back in its sheath, Naruto sprang up and leapt into the air, asking, "Is that so? How about we put that to the test?" Neji restarted his Kaden as Naruto descended, declaring, "I will meet your destiny head-on and I will win." Neji's Kaden and Naruto's Charka covered Sakabado collided, and for a few seconds, neither allowed the other to move before Neji's Kaden began to buckle and break, shocking everyone in the crowd. especially the Hyuga clan. Neji was sent many yards away when Naruto used the momentum of the blade to strike his temple. When Neji stood up, he was startled to see nothing. Since he was still unable to see anything, he attempted to activate his Byakugan but was unable. Neji asked, "How does it feel to be blind, Neji?" As she searched the area for Naruto's voice but was unable to find it. For a proclaimed prodigy and genius, you are blinded by your so-called fate and destiny. Therefore, maybe being blind will open up your eyes. How dare you do something like this to me? I am a Hyuga and a genius and I see all. Then how are you unable to see the truth of what Hinata was saying to you? You have been blinded by your anger and hatred of the main house and you are not deserving of such eyes. After finding Naruto's voice, he stood up once again and ran at Naruto with a glowing hand, saying, because she is a main house brat who doesn't even know her place in the world. Unprepared, Naruto was unable to protect himself when a charka palm struck his chest before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He spun around, but his chin struck his fist, sending him tumbling back. He attempted to move after falling to the ground, but his body refused to cooperate. All he could see when he looked up was Naruto standing above him. Why did you not defeat outright? Because if I did, Hinata would lose someone she has cared about for a long time. I had intended to defeat you as quickly and painfully as possible, but Hinata eased my mind on that subject. Hinata cares more than you think about you and you should at least try to know her again. The winner of the first match is Uzumaki Naruto. While Naruto proceeded to get his bow, which he had put down, two medics emerged to help Neji. He was uncomfortable when the audience applauded him. Sitting in the crowd, he glanced at Hinata and gave her a quick wink that caused her to flush. Will Sasuke and Gaara please come down to the arena? Gaara strolled past Naruto as he descended the stairs, and the two of them exchanged glances and a slight nod. Tamari, Kankuro, and Baki were concerned while Gaara calmly waited while creating tiny sand creations in his palm. Since they had never witnessed Gaara engaging in such activities in his free time, they were a little uneasy about his apparent relaxation and questioned whether it would have an impact on their invasion preparations. If Sasuke does not appear in the arena in the next minute, you will be automatically disqualified. The Kazekage handed Sarutobi the weapon. Sarutobi could only grimace at the Kazecage's words and consider his next move for a few moments. Why not postpone the Sasuke and Gaara match? Many of the lords present today are waiting to see the last Uchiha in combat. Many of them would be disappointed if they are unable to see such a spectacle. There was a loud cheer of discontent as fans expressed their desire to watch the Uchiha in action. The match between Gaara and Sasuke will be postponed for the final match of this round. Tamari and Kankuro gave Gaara strange looks as he shrugged his shoulders and went back up the stairs into the waiting area. What? Gaara asked, observing their appearance. They both quickly averted their eyes while maintaining the same thought. What's wrong with him? They believed that his strange behavior would ultimately pass after observing it for a while, but it hasn't. They were anxious in a different way because of this Gaara, not because they didn't mind not hearing the continual threats to their life. Will Kankuro and Shino Aburame please come down to the arena to start their fight? When Kankuro gave up without a fight, a certain Aburame became enraged, and his Kikai colony sensed his brewing rage. Tamari floated on her fan and waited excitedly for Shikamaru to descend, saying, Will Tamari and Shikamaru Nara please come down to start their fight? He felt a sword stab him in the back, and he fell forward over the rail and onto the ground. Man, this is so troublesome. I had to fight a girl in the preliminaries and now I have to fight another one. Why does life have to be such a drag? Maybe I should forfeit too, seeing as the crowd doesn't want to see my fight anyway. Geez, Naruto. Thanks a lot. He waved to Shikamaru while glancing over the rail. No problem, Shikamaru. Naruto was happy that he had forced Shikamaru over the rail since he had witnessed a sleeping genius demonstrate his superior intelligence and tactical skill to a near victory before giving up for lack of charka. It goes without saying that his opponent was not happy with her win and continued to glare at Shikamaru, even if Naruto could have sworn it was for something other than resentment. After being questioned about whether he would stick around to see the last match, Naruto made the decision to go at this time, stating that he had some business to attend to. I don't think they will be able to finish, but I expect both of them to fight to the best of their abilities, regardless of who wins. Kankuro and Tamari exchanged another glance and pondered whether Naruto had figured out their strategy. Just then, in a whirl of leaves, came Sasuke and Kakashi. The entire audience put on a brave face as they saw the final Uchiha arrive. Sorry, we're late. I got held up by my sensei. He said something about making a dramatic appearance. Genma gave Kakashi a fierce look, but he turned away. Next time, Could you actually appear on time? She asked. The sand shinobi in attendance were very astonished when Sasuke dropped into a simple taijutsu posture, as they had anticipated Gaara to stand there with his arms crossed. Any who let the final match in the first round between Gaara and Sasuke begin. Hajime. Sasuke raced forward, only to leap sideways as a sand fist erupted to strike him. Before he reverted to his own stance, the sand slipping back, he glanced at Gaara and saw his own fist extended. Sasuke clenched his jaw and lunged at Gaara once again. Gaara tried to punch again, but it just struck the air. He sensed the sand shifting to protect him, but Sasuke's kick was only just stopped as he moved once again to strike Gaara's front. Gaara pushed Sasuke aside as he swiftly pushed the sand off his body like a shield. After rapidly gathering his sand once more and forming it into a sturdy shield, he sat inside and hurriedly considered his options for defeating Sasuke. Sasuke was frantically attacking outside the sandball in an attempt to get through, and when it looked futile to keep going, he sprang back onto the stadium wall. He knelt down and extended his arm, and soon after, lightning began to crackle as it began to round his hand. At a very high speed, he went directly at it after crashing down the wall. He pushed out his arm and struck the sand shield. Spikes protruded from the sand, nearly impaling him as he felt his arm go inside the ball only to be swiftly jerked out. From inside the shield, there was a scream that reverberated around the stadium. When everything began to happen, there was another heart-stopping cry. What is this? Is this my blood? Before and during the match between Sasuke and Gaara, no one spoke out. That is the plan. Any questions? All right, then. Let's go for Konoha. Everyone vanished in a huge leaf whirlpool, and the battle for Konoha would soon start. After a brief signal from the cage, many feathers fell on the onlookers, instantly putting the majority to sleep. Many ninja wore headbands with musical notes on them, but the majority of the chunin in the stands were able to detect the genjutsu, were immediately dispelled, and were attacked. Baki landed alongside Gaara, accompanied by Temari and Kankuro. Temari and Kankuro nodded, lifted Gaara onto their shoulders, and leapt off, saying, Temari, Kankuro, you need to get Gaara out of here while he recovers from that attack. After being momentarily stunned, Sasuke leapt off after them. Inside the stands, Hinata was in the process of waking the other genin who could assist after swiftly seeing through the genjutsu. She quickly roused Kiba, Shino, Choji, Ino, and Sakura. You guys, I think we are under attack by a foreign village. We need to go help the civilians throughout the village escape. Sakura, who was frazzled, asked, where are we supposed to bring them? A kunai flew directly into the forehead of a sound ninja who had crept up behind Ino and was ready to stab her in the head. Kakashi touched down beside them. Kakashi returned to the battle and quickly slashed a sound ninja in the chest, killing him. There are several passages that lead into the Hokage mountain. Hinata should be able to locate them with her Byakugan. Try to escort as many civilians as possible and stick together. When Hinata returned them to the situation, the genin was standing there staring at Kakashi. Snap out of it. We have a mission to do. Kiba, Shino and I will find any civilians with our abilities. Sakura, Ino and Choji, you will keep the civilians safe until we are able to move to the safe houses. Everyone in the room nodded and they fled. Along the wall in a flash, the sound ninja kneeling in a circle slammed their palms together and made their hand signals. After a loud scream, a huge three-headed snake summon emerged from the smoke and launched an assault on the wall, creating a wide opening for adversaries to enter. Excited by the summoning, the ninja were unaware of a large figure behind their positions and a red streak of hair that slipped past them. He hurried forward and swiftly killed the first person he saw. Kenshin said these enemies would be strong, yet they all look weaker than he was when he was younger. No matter, I promised I would help him and help I shall. The enemy spun around and saw one of their own fall to an unidentified foe with a big cloak. With the intention of killing him with a single blow, they all drew kunai and leapt at him. He leapt at them, fully aware of the outcome of his fight, saying, that's right, come at me and see if you can take me down. Within the village, Naruto saw Temari and Kankuro carrying Gaara leaping above him after he had just knocked out a sand ninja. What on earth? Then he noticed Sasuke pursuing the group. This is not encouraging. Haku, do you think you will be able to hold this area without my help? I should be able to. Naruto. Naruto leapt on top of the rooftops to pursue Sasuke, saying, that's good to hear. I leave this area to you then. Naruto was killed before he even hit the ground again after a sound ninja leapt to stop him, but he had multiple senbon buried in his head. Several mirrors of ice stopped the local sound and sand ninja. Out of them came a voice. Haku's image appeared on the mirrors. and then a real hail of senbons flew at them, pinning them down with no way out. You will not pass this area. Naruto in the Konoha forest. What happened to Gaara that his siblings had to assist him? Furthermore, why is Sasuke after them? Gaara must have had some sort of incident. And I will soon learn the truth. With Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara to his left and Sasuke to his right, he leapt from a tree and landed on a branch. While Temari, Kankuro, and Sasuke were glaring daggers at one another, Gaara was muttering random phrases. Naruto leapt to separate them. Temari and Kankuro, give me. Naruto was interrupted by a crazy voice. Sasuke, get down. Gaara leapt from Temari's and Kankuro's arms and tackled Naruto, causing them to fall from the tree. It's you. The boy who got me locked up, get over here so I can kill you. Gaara exclaimed. As they fell, Naruto struggled with Gaara. As Gaara crashed in a huge puff of sand, he saw the ground coming quickly and swapped himself out for a log. The sand then began to collect around Gaara, forming a miniature Shukaku in the process. Gaara, snap out of this. You're stronger than this. Gaara laughed. Gaara is not longer here. That fool was stupid enough to believe that some new seal would keep me locked up forever, but he was wrong. All I needed to do was wait for the right moment to take over, and now that I am out, nothing is going to stop me. Not even you, QB container. AN. Gaara will be referred as Shukaku for the moment. Naruto leapt down at him, but Shukaku had anticipated it. We will see about that, Shukaku. Sand shuriken. Naruto's back slammed against a tree after he was hurled backward by a flurry of shuriken. After picking himself up, Naruto wiped the blood from his mouth away. He sealed his hands in a cross. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto nodded at each of the 4 clones that materialized beside him. Each of them leapt from a different angle at Shukaku. Shukaku attempted to target them all at once, but he was unable to keep up with their quick movements. As one of the Narutos exclaimed, "Now!" Shukaku lunged forward to take down one of the Narutos as he ran at him, but Naruto swiftly sidestepped his blow. Shukaku exclaimed, "Ryukansen!" as he saw another Naruto crouching low to the ground, propelling him forward. Ryushosen. Shukaku flew into the air after taking a crushing blow beneath his chin. Ryutsusen. Shukaku was hit hard on the top of the head, which sent him flying back to the ground, where he hit the ground with a loud thud. As Shukaku slowly stood up, he saw Naruto standing there, poised to strike. Ryusosen. After bouncing back from the barrage of blows, Shukaku turned to see Naruto in his Batojutsu stance. Soryasen. Naruto slammed Shukaku into a tree after knocking him away with a blow to the ribs. While Sasuke could only observe and silently assess the situation, Kankuro and Temari were shocked that Gaara had been beaten so swiftly. When Naruto heard an evil cackle, he approached Shukaku, who was leaning against the tree. The earth began to change beneath Naruto, and sand began to seep out and encircle Shukaku. You think this is over, boy? This battle has only just begun. You will regret the day you ever tried to see me away, boy. Sasuke and the Sand siblings were promptly warned by Naruto. Get out of here now! They exclaimed, standing around in bewilderment. They appeared to be affected by the words. I said, get away from this area unless you want to die, and promptly left in an attempt to avoid what was about to happen. Sand kept piling up on top of Shukaku until a huge pile of sand was created, and a savage roar erupted from within. Before being sealed into Gaara, Shukaku quickly returned to his full size after a giant figure appeared from the sand. All Naruto could do was look up at the massive figure and wonder how he was going to take down a monster like that. Shukaku chuckled at Naruto when he squatted on a tree. He threw sand in Naruto's direction, and it began to encircle him. Not so tough now, are you? He asked. The sand encased Naruto in a cocoon and compressed down, saying, now, time for you to die. However, a great cloud of smoke appeared and a loud howl was heard before the sand could completely crush Naruto. From the smoke cloud, a huge fox with multiple tails swirling behind it and several stories of height appeared, with Naruto perched atop its head. The fox gave Naruto a look. My name is Jin. Who has summoned me here and for what reason? My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I ask for your assistance in defeating Shukaku, the one-tailed demon. He turned to Shukaku and rushed forward, saying, I understand, young one. Shukaku suddenly puffed up and growled at the new obstacle in his path. Wind bullet! He exclaimed, launching a huge ball of compressed air that Jin just managed to avoid. Gaara was stuck atop Shukaku's head, as Naruto observed. Jin Do you think you will be able to get me close enough for me to be able to make contact with the person stuck on Shukaku's head? The enormous fox wrapped his tails around multiple tree groves, tore them out of the ground, and kept them ready, saying, "It may be difficult with him attacking us from a range, but I should be able to complete what you want." Shukaku was ready with another wind bullet, which he fired at Jin. As he charged forward once more. When he threw the trees at the approaching wind bullet, two objects collided, creating a huge smokescreen. Jin ran out of the smoke and grabbed hold of Shukaku, biting down on his neck and digging his claws into his arms as Shukaku peered at the smoke, trying to see if anything was concealed there. Naruto leapt to Gaara and used a paper seal he had made under Kyuubi's tutelage to run down Jin's head. He slammed the seal onto Gaara's head and exclaimed, "Take this, Shukaku." "No. I just got out, too." Gaara dropped from his position as Shukaku's form began to break apart. Naruto leapt after him and embraced him. Jin vanished in a cloud of smoke, saying, "It seems my job here is done. Until next time, young summoner." In the hopes that it could support the weight of two people, Naruto fell toward the trees and then toward a tree with dense foliage. The branches beneath them held firm, but they landed hard on the leaves. Gaara, who had been unconscious, began to stir and sat up, massaging his head. "Well, seems I owe more thanks, Naruto." "No need, Gaara. I did what I had to do to stop Shukaku and save you in the process. Nothing more and nothing less. Now, let's get down from here." Naruto extended a hand to Gaara, who feebly accepted it before they descended the tree. Within the village, in order to move them toward the safe area, Hinata and the other genin had located a few isolated villagers and gathered them in a safe location. About 10 individuals who had been uninformed of the attack and had fallen behind in the evacuations had been gathered by them. When two sound shinobi spotted them, they immediately started toward the Hokage mountain. "Hey, you people! Stop right where you are!" The two sound ninja were leaping after them when Hinata turned around. "Kiba, Shino, Ino, Sakura, take the villagers to the safe area. I will delay these two ninja." Shino whispered, "Hinata, that could be a deadly course of action." "Shino, our priorities are not our own safety but the safety of the villagers. And I am telling you to go without me. How can you even think of leaving us behind while you are going to be fighting ninja that are stronger than you?" Kiba grumbled. "Now as a teammate and a friend, listen to me and go without me." Kiba and Shino reluctantly left, but they did as Hinata asked. "I expect you to trust in my abilities and my judgment." They swiftly escorted the villagers away. After avoiding multiple shuriken that could have killed them, the two ninja attempted to close the gap with the villagers but were halted. Hinata was standing in the Jiyuken stance with her Byakugan activated. With one behind her and one in front, the two sound ninja leapt to the ground. Both ninja jumped to Hinata, expecting to overwhelm her, but instead had several charka points closed. "Would you look at this man? The little Kunichi thinks she can take down two Junin by herself. I say we have a little fun with her once we defeat her." A Hyuga. Huh? Orochimaru has wanted to get his hands the Byakugan, and just imagine what he will reward us with when we bring in a Hyuga to him. Under their stares, Hinata tensed up and braced herself. After a few seconds of waiting, she rushed forward when neither moved. She quickly ducked under a kunai that one of the sound ninjas swung at her, closing multiple tenketsu points on the ninja's arm in the process. He took hold of his arm. The sound ninja hurried forward with the intention of bringing Hinata down, saying, "Ga, you stupid little bitch. I am going to get you for that." With his kunai pointed directly at Hinata's face, he shouted with assurance, "Got you, bitch." Targeting the tenketsu around his arms and legs, Hinata stepped to the side with grace, causing the ninja to stagger forward and hit the ground face first. He got up, but Hinata kicked him in the face, knocking him unconscious. "Okay. One down, one to go." Hinata turned to see him concealed behind a number of walls. She moved stealthily to the sound ninja position. He noticed that Hinata was no longer on the street when he peered past the wall he was hiding behind. But when he looked up, he saw Hinata bearing down on him, her palms gleaming with charka, and he sensed faint vibrations coming from above. Her palms slammed against the floor, and he barely ducked back into the streets to avoid her attack. He made a long string of hand seals and said, "It seems I can't go easy on you, girl. Onpa ng no jutsu. I invented the sound wave amplification technique." A huge burst of air erupted from the ninja's body, and Hinata saw a thin layer of charka living in the atmosphere. When Hinata suddenly became lightheaded, she dropped to one knee to try to recover, but she was determined not to let the ninja finish whatever he was trying to do. "How do you like the effects of my technique? Any movement anybody makes sends off sound waves, but in this area, I have made it into a weapon. With sound directly attacking your ears, I can throw off your equilibrium. Anything in about a 10-meter radius is my area of attack." Hinata gave him a look. As soon as possible, Hinata got up and fled the area, saying, "Thanks for telling me that information." "Not so fast." The ninja clapped his hands, and as they sped in Hinata's direction, sound waves were audible. She fell face first toward the ground, falling far short of her target, her eardrums taking a violent lashing. She tried to stop the ringing in her ears by gripping them. Her left shoulder, which she felt had fractured, was slammed hard against the ground as she felt her legs drag her into the air. When the ninja gave her a vicious kick to the stomach, she threw herself onto her right arm. She rolled around on the ground and attempted to get up, but she threw up the contents of her stomach and doubled over. When the sound ninja came into view, she rolled over to keep from falling over her own vomit and gazed up at the sky in a blank manner. "So the Hyuga bitch given up?" She cried out in agony as he slammed his feet into her kneecap, shattering it. With a kunai in hand, he pinned Hinata to the ground and put his hand around her throat, saying, "That's to stop you from running away." He placed the kunai at Hinata's jacket neck and pulled it down, severing the jacket in the middle. "Now time for me to have some fun, you little slut." Hinata began to concentrate charka into her right hand while gritting her teeth. After examining Hinata's body, the ninja licked his lips and said, well, it seems the little girl is a lot more than she looks." He lowered his kunai once more to Hinata's shirt, and he was only halfway there when Hinata raised her voice. "Not that you will ever get to see it." Hinata shot the ninja in the forehead with her charka infused hand. The outcome was instantaneous. The ninja fell to the ground, dead, and a liquid began to drip from his ears. Hinata made an effort to concentrate so she could resume moving, but her body refused to cooperate. As she lay helplessly on the ground, more sound ninja appeared in the corner of her eye. The sound ninja were killed in their tracks when she succumbed to her wounds and failed to see a stream of shuriken flying toward them. Returning to the wall outside, the stranger slashed his sword downward to wipe the blood from it after the last sound ninja slid off of it. He noted that the snake had left a broad path of devastation behind it as it had made its way roughly half a mile into the city. He smirked confidently and pursued the raging snake. After a minute of running, he had reached the snake's tail when he leapt on it and began to move toward its head, leaving it with deep cuts on its back that caused it to writhe in agony. This went on until he got to the top of the head and was ready to sever the snake's skull with his sword when he looked up to see a big object drop directly on top of him. He leapt from the snake and ran sideways, barely avoiding the big object that had dropped from the sky. He glared at the thing that had landed on his kill and recognized it as a huge toad. Who the heck summons a giant toad to crush a giant snake? He heard a voice behind him. "That would be me. Do you have anything to say about it, stranger?" "No other than the fact you stole a kill away from me. But I suppose summoning a giant toad to crush a giant snake would be the easy way out for someone who is weaker, and not a genius like me." Jiraiya's right eye began to twitch with irritation. This man was already bothering him, even though he hardly knew him. When they immediately entered the battle with the intention of exposing the other, they made eye contact. With Kenshin had only reached the top of the building while bouncing along Konoha's walls before being stopped by a number of Anbu who were kneeling outside the wall. "Don't touch the wall. Anything that comes in contact with it will instantly burn." As Kenshin approached, he could see that Sarutobi and Orochimaru were fighting inside. He pulled out his sword and struck the charka wall with it. It made a scraping sound, but neither Kenshin's sword nor the wall showed any signs of damage. He turned to face the two Anbu who were waiting close by and said, "It seems that this wall responds to things that are living or organic. I am going to try to disrupt this wall. I want you to try and capture the 4 people at the corners as they seem to be the ones maintaining this wall." As Kenshin stood in his Badojutsu stance and concentrated, the Anbu prepared themselves. Hidden Mitsurugi. Ryu. Amakakeru Ryu no Hirameki. The hit was invisible to the Anbu onlookers, and all that was visible was a single line that broke the barrier and pierced the wall. The sudden release of charka caused the 4 ninja at each corner to be blown back, and Orochimaru could only hiss in annoyance as he watched the barrier around him vanish. He had the 3rd Hokage on the ropes and was ready to use his secret jutsu to kill him when the barrier fell, diverting his focus from his hand signals and preventing him from calling forth his targets. Orochimaru was rapidly weighing his options when he was cut by a sword slash, which he dodged by jumping back. He noticed a set of amber eyes staring at him from his new opponent. "Be ready to die, snake." With a single hand gesture, his kusanagi shot off the ground and headed directly for the 3rd Hokage, saying, "Not before I kill the old fool." Kenshin noticed the flying blade. Jumped to catch it as it flew through the air. He caught Kusanagi between his own hands after tossing aside his own sword. At yet another failed attempt to kill his old sensei, Orochimaru hissed in frustration. Only 3 figures leapt to the side when he said, "Sound 4, we are leaving." He turned to see his 4th subordinate restrained by multiple Konoha Anbu. "Let's get out of here." "But, Orochimaru, Sama, what about?" The subordinate closed his mouth after saying, "I said we are leaving." When an Anbu jumped up to pursue, Orochimaru and his subordinates leapt away, and one of them threw a net of a sticky substance out of his mouth, forcing the Anbu back to the ground. Kenshin hurried to the third, who was perspiring profusely and taking deep breaths. "Hokage. Sama, are you okay?" The Hokage raised his head. Before faintly smiling, he said, "I'm fine, Kenshin." Kenshin swiftly raised the Hokage onto his shoulders and tried to move, but his body was unresponsive and his movements were extremely slow. "What am I doing wrong?" As he caught Orochimaru's blade, he became aware that his hands were cut. His final thought before passing out himself was, poison.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.